Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the thrill-packed pre-holiday edition of the Jim Cornette Experience, the last experience, brand new one at least, of 2019. And what a program we got today, folks. We got an asshole impeached for Christmas. We paid tribute to a legend last week in Knoxville, Tennessee. We have suffered through more all petite wrestling for your listening pleasure. It was a stunning program last Wednesday night, folks. And to join me in this experience, Hawaiian Brian, the podcasting lion, the king of the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, Mr. Co-host to you, he's Swammy's Pappy, the proprietor of the French Toast Chateau. He is Happy Holiday Brian Last.
Aloha, Jim. A pleasure to be here once again for another fun and lovable episode of The Experience.
Yeah, we couldn't wait to get started with this show, and now that we've started it, apparently we can't wait to get finished with it. No, this is the last brand new experience of 2019, and we've gotten Christmas presents in several different ways, both good, as we'll talk about the Bobby Eaton tribute event, a night of appreciation last weekend in Knoxville, and the bad, or maybe this is so bad it was good. All Elite Wrestling gave us a Christmas present of a show to do with their show. Holy jumping shitballs. What was it? One guy said on Twitter, the chickens, I think it was Alan Cheapshot. The chickens are coming home to roost.
Alan Blackstock, and he has some profound takes on what's happening in wrestling, and I think he's not wrong on this one.
Well, when the chickens came home to roost, they apparently ate a lot of seed on the way flying south for the winter because they shit all over everything on the way in when they came in for a landing. Speaking of shitting all over everything, a lot of people are going to be shitting all over me if I don't get them their packages by Christmas, and that's why I'm pleased to announce, ladies and gentlemen, right at the top of the program, if you are a Cult of Cornette's Collectibles customer, see, I like that alliteration, and you have ordered, we are taping this program on Thursday, December 19th. If you ordered anything from JimCornette.com by Wednesday, December 18th at 6 p.m., it has either already been in the mail or it went in the mail this morning. This is the closest I've been to caught up in months and months, but we struggled our way back. If you get your order, I've been saying, please get it in. If you haven't done it now or by now, if you get your stuff in by Friday at like 6 p.m., what is that, December 20th, then it will go out on Saturday, December 21st. And after that, as it's been broadcast and bragged about and so looked forward to, I'm taking a vacation, the longest and the most reasonable one in years, to get some personal time and wring my brain out over the holidays. So any orders that come in, and we're putting up a notice to this on the website, but any orders that come in from December 21st until January 2nd will begin being filled on January 3rd when I come back to the land of the living. I'm going to take a nice vacation about 17 feet away from my bed, in my couch, petting my puppy, eating some food, for heaven's sake, instead of the elves came and helped me pack boxes over the weekend. I think that at least I was delusional enough from lack of sleep to imagine that, to hallucinate that, Brian. But anyway, we're caught up. We're getting this stuff out. Then we're taking the holiday break. And if you're looking for burger towels, they've been sold out. We've taken those down. Some shirts, if you're looking for some sizes of the T-shirts, you can't choose those because we sold out of those. I just got a brand new box of shirts, and immediately those orders were already spoken for and sold out again of a couple sizes. The Mid-Atlantic film sets are down. They're custom made, don't have time to make anymore. Everything will be back on sale in January of those items, but it's been quite hectic. So anyway, and then tell them about the show schedule, Brian, while I'm having my meditational period at the monastery, what we're going to be broadcasting.
This Monday is the last regular episode of the drive-thru for the year of 2019. After that, on The Experience next week, it is an omnibus collection, Dave Meltzer on The Experience. Several years worth of Dave's appearances on The Experience. The following Monday on the...
And funny thing enough, it was several years and it was only one program because he would never get to the point. But go ahead.
Well, the following Monday on the drive-thru, we're going to have the Jim Ross on the Experience Omnibus, all of Jim Ross's appearances on the show throughout the years. And then the following week on the Experience, or that same week on the Experience, following week from this week, I guess, we're going to have a collection of all the live Jim Cornette experiences that you have done at the old Charlotte Legends Wrestling Fan Fest. And those are a lot of fun. A lot of great Bobby Fulton moments on those shows.
Yes, and Dr. Tom Pritchard was in one of those. Uncle Les Thatcher's been in a few of those. We've had a variety of guests. Those are all going to be up. And speaking of Bobby Fulton, my live event schedule. I'm going to give you my live event schedule now. Ladies and gentlemen, get a pencil and a piece of paper and take down my live event schedule for the year 2020. I already have it booked. March 14th, I'm going to be in Circleville, Ohio for World Classic Professional Big Time Wrestling, a.k.a. Bobby Fulton. And they've opened up a new building. You know, they tore his old building down. And on a promo I did over the weekend, I mentioned that I was responsible for that, getting that slum leveled up there in Circleville, Ohio, that trashy building with all those trashy people in it. I was responsible. I got the zoning changed, and they leveled it to the ground, so never again could Bobby Fulton run an event in that barn. But now they've foiled me, Brian, because they built a brand new big old building.
Oh, wow.
Up at the Heritage Center, a brand new big old building up here in Circleville, and Bobby Fulton is breaking it in with a big fan fest and wrestling event on March 14th. And unfortunately, as the promo said, I did the promo. I had Stephen P. New there in Knoxville. He came down to consult with me on some more of these outlaw mud shows we want to put out of business and drive underground. And he looked at the paperwork because, see, I thought that what I was doing was signing an agreement. I heard that there was a home for unwed mothers that was going out of business. So I agreed to provide them with as many more unwed mothers as I could. I thought that's what I was agreeing to as a charitable, thing. I donate some of my time and effort, sperm, whatever the case may be, to, the underprivileged. But what I really signed was a contract to be on Bobby Fulton's World Classic Professional Big Time Wrestling event on March 14th. And even Stephen P. New could not get me out of it. And so now I have to appear there in Circleville again. The town is so small. He put me in a hotel. It was so small. I stuck the key in the door and broke the window. And I had to step outside every time I wanted to change my mind. They stole my towels. And then, so anyway, it's a situation, a fluid situation. But as it stands now, Stephen P. New, and by the way, that is Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084, Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, Stephen P. New of the consigliere of Cult of Cornette fame, Stephen P. New, that rights the wrongs and injustices perpetrated on you by the big evil corporations and the billionaires. That's Stephen P. New. Even he couldn't get me out of this, so I'm going to have to be there at Bobby Fulton's event. And there's going to be a fan fest during the day and then wrestling matches that night. And the Midnight Express will be there. Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey. If I've got to go, they've got to go too. All because of Bobby Fulton.
Where's Stan?
Stan doesn't go. No, Stan doesn't want to leave the house. No, anyway, that's where I was going with that. You can see me if you're a member of the Cult of Cornette, you want to see me in person in 2020. Here are the dates. March 14th, as I mentioned, in Circleville, Ohio, for Bobby Fulton. I will be at the end of March, and I don't have the dates in front of me. I'm going to be at LexCon for my good friend Jared Greer, the Lexington Comic and Toy Convention in Lexington, Kentucky, at Lexington Center, which is fun every year. And in August, I will be back at the Gathering in Charlotte for the folks at T-Mart Promotions who have picked up the mantle and carrying on the Charlotte Summer Fan Fest tradition. We'll be back down there with Mark James, I'm sure will be as well, and all of our cohorts. And that's pretty much my 2020 schedule. I determined that when I was driving back from Knoxville last weekend, I said, this is a good time because I was actually at a wrestling event I had fun at last weekend. And we're going to talk about that in a little while. But I said, this is a good time. I always try to pick a good spot, right? Instead, my last time managing was at WrestleCade in Winston-Salem a couple years ago, managing a UFC Hall of Famer, Dan Severn, in front of a couple thousand people on a fairly major event. I like to pick spots where my last match where I got to team with Nightmare Danny Davis in OVW a few years ago and do that one more time and actually didn't hurt myself and shit still looked good. I said, okay, I'm done there. I try to pick good spots. And so I'm determining that except for this shyster contract that I signed with Bobby Fulton, there will be wrestling matches on March 14th. I'm going to try in 2020 to stay away from any personal appearance, most personal appearances all, but any personal appearance that has any actual wrestling going on. This is what I need to do is just bop back once a year and do some kind of wrestling show for 3 more years so I can get my 40 years even, because I got to have an even number for my OCD.
Have you thought about going backwards, going in reverse, kind of ending up where you started, starting to take pictures again, maybe put on the plaid shirt? Get the camera out.
I've still got one of those plaid shirts. I've still got the camera and one of those plaid shirts. But only problem is there's no matches to photograph.
That's true. That's true.
They're not running the Louisville Gardens, and I don't want to travel. So you have 3 chances to see me live in person next year, and until June at least, nothing else is going to come up. As I've talked about, we've got things going on. We're busy, and I'm sick of hotel rooms, but. I'm going to keep it to fan fests, Legends fan fests, and Comic Cons from now on. Since I hit one wrestling event that I enjoyed being a part of, and it was good. I'm gonna end on a high note.
When are we doing Cornstalk? The Jim Cornette
Cornstalk. Oh my God. Anyway, the moment we have all waited for, ladies and gentlemen. I can't say our long national nightmare has come to an end, but at least the fucking asshole has some shit on his face. Donald Trump has officially been impeached. And you saw the Republicans saying, oh, the Democrats have been trying to do this since day one. You think? Because we knew. And they knew, but they won't admit it. We knew and admitted it. That he's a crook and a criminal and an idiot and an asshole, and a con man, and a fraud, and a lunatic, and mentally unstable, and a liar, and a psychopath, and a sociopath, and all the other paths that he's gone down.
He cheats at golf.
He cheats at golf. He cheats on his wife. He cheats the government. He cheats the people. He cheats everybody. He's a piece of shit. And the Democrats have been saying that since day one. And they've just been chasing down the evidence because all of the fucking shysters and the con men and the criminals and the crooks and the thugs and the fucking imbeciles that he hangs out with are practiced at covering their tracks. But in some cases, not really, once they started investigating. And they put about, what was the last count? 6 or 7 of them in jail. All of them, he's ahead on indictments, for presidents for life, for his staff and his minions. I think he's ahead on jail sentences, except maybe for the eventual fallout from Watergate. They may have gotten more indictments and convictions, but Trump has done it in record time because everybody he knows is a piece of shit and a liar and a criminal. So anyway, we know what's going to happen. The Republicans who are scared in the Senate that the rubes and the hillbillies and the suckers and the rednecks and the fucking various whatever is wrong with you as a human being that causes you to support Donald Trump, whatever that description may be, that is a defective part of your anatomy or a defect in your fucking psyche and your human nature that would make you in any way, shape, or form support, condone, endorse, or even tolerate this human 6'3" stack of shit that sits in the fucking Oval Office, whatever that is. The Republican senators are afraid that those people are going to vote him out, so they're going to lose their job. So they're going to act like, well, no, there's nothing wrong with all the things that he's done, that he's admitted, and that we found out. And so they're not going to convict him, but at least he's up. The trials, the statements, they're all going to come out. People on record, people under oath, telling everybody what a piece of shit he is and what he's done. And, it'll help the history books because maybe it won't be 50 years. Maybe it'll be 20 years. Maybe I'll live to see these books that they're going to write with what a shit stain he was when everybody finds out everything. and how much he fucked up in the country and how much he fucked up in the government and what a slime ball he and everybody that he fucking hangs out with really is. And when they write those books, they will further wipe their fucking feet on his orange, made-up, jowly face and slap mud on that fucking mouth that looks like a pig's fucking anus and get him a little bit muddier because they'll say, and he also got impeached because he was a piece of shit. So anyway, but we've got that to entertain us for Christmas, and I think that's a good thing.
Did you watch any of the House of Representatives? I mean, it's been several days of various things, the Rules Committee, and then...
Oh, yeah. And I'd watched some of the testimony while I was packing boxes a couple weeks ago, and then I watched some of this, and it's just the shameless assholery of every Republican, and they can't defend him. So they cut the same promo time after time with it's the rules or it's the process or it's not fair. There's nothing wrong with it because they can't actually say, well, why would anyone think a fine human being like Donald Trump would do such a thing? Or the laughter would run him out of the fucking building, right? So they can't defend him because they all know he's a piece of shit. They're just scared for themselves. And the best they can do is say, well, look at the economy. And so it's basically saying, okay, we're going to bribe all of you. Everybody in America, we're going to give you a little extra money artificially because we know the only reason the economy is doing well at all, even despite all of the shit he tries to pick with China and that he or the people he has to run things don't understand how the economy works. But he gave the billionaires and the big corporations the tax breaks. He's dropped regulations so they can poison us again and they can contaminate the environment again and they can sell us defective shit. And there's nobody looking after him. That's why the economy's doing well, because he's a Republican on steroids. All the Republicans don't want regulation and taxes on these fucking people because that's who, buys their way into office. But at least they turn a crooked eye at crooks, right? They look at you sideways if you're actually a crooked liar. Trump's a Republican on steroids. He doesn't even care about that. But they'll crow about the economy and they'll try to fucking look at the pretty monkey, shine a light on the wall. But they can't defend him because he's a piece of shit and they know it. And it's obvious.
Can you imagine the Ukraine? One of the most, if not the single most corrupt country in the world. Everyone acknowledges this. Republican, Democrat, Independent. Everyone acknowledges this. So Donald Trump was so concerned about this corruption with the Bidens that he went to the most corrupt nation in the world and said, please open an investigation because I am a crusader against corruption.
Well, and then one of the Ukrainian foreign ministers, basically when his reply to one of the good politicians over here saying, hey, you guys, you need to straighten up your shit. You can't be using your political power to investigate and persecute rivals. And the guy said, oh, like you do in the United States? What the fuck? We're a joke. The United States as a country and as a people is a fucking complete joke around the world because everybody else they didn't see his reality shows and they don't know that, there's a large segment of this country that is so stupid and gullible or backwards or whatever the fuck that something like this could happen. And the Electoral College, and it was a perfect storm of things, and nobody liked Hillary. They just think that we in a fair election, and that Russia was interfering, obviously, because, Putin is still getting everything he wants. But people around the world who don't study this closely and see how this fucking freak show happened think that in a fair, unbiased election, the majority of people in this country actually elected this fucking prick. And that's why they laugh at us.
That's one of the things. It's become a Republican talking point. And I shouldn't even say Republican. It's become a House Republican talking point because I actually know a lot of Republicans who really hate him and think he's ruined the party and ruined conservatism and exposed a lot of people who said they were conservatives as being frauds because they're going against every single basic principle of conservatism. But they keep saying, you all must hate the 63 million people who elected him, our duly elected president, 63 million. And I'm thinking, what about the 65 million who voted for Hillary? What about the 65 million who said no? The majority of the country who said no
Well, and besides that, he is right. I do hate the 63 million dumb, stupid motherfuckers that elected this fucking prick. So that I have to be ashamed to be an American citizen. So that I have to worry about whatever the fuck he's going to fuck up next. And just so that we have to look at his fucking lying face and hear his whiny little bitch voice. Blathering like he's having a series of small strokes every time he starts crowing about himself and sniffing his own farts. Yes, I do hate those 63 million. But why do you think I blocked them all? Every once in a while I do. By the way, if you haven't already waved your hand and called attention to yourself, let me know you're a fucking Trump supporter and you're fucking blocked. And that's my Twitter thing. I block people. And see, these people say, well, what a coward he is, blocking people who don't agree with him. I'm not a coward. I'm cruel, and I'm blocking you because if you are stupid enough to have voted for Donald Trump, be a fan of the Archbishop of Talentberry, like the fucking cosplay wrestlers or the fucking garbage deathmatch wrestlers, or do some other stupid, socially abnormal thing that you're into, and you call attention to it, I block you on Twitter because you do not deserve the entertainment and the education and the wisdom of following me. So I deprive you of the enjoyment that you would get or the education you might get. Some of the things I tweet might actually smarten you up if it's possible. Some of the things that I tweet would entertain you. It's a privilege to be able to be in the cult and follow me here on Twitter because, after all, that privilege can be revoked. And if you prove to me that you've done something really stupid, I will revoke that privilege. Isn't that the whole meaning of blocking someone on Twitter? You can't see me, motherfucker. You don't deserve it.
I think so. I think that's kind of the principle. You get some trolls who just want to jump into you and jump into your threads. And
if they say anything smart ass, they get blocked too. If I have time. Sometimes I don't block people that if somebody says something out of the way and I see they follow me, I'll block them because they don't deserve the entertainment. But other times, if somebody says something is backwards and is a smart ass and they don't follow me, then I don't block them because I think I want them to see shit that I say because that will make them even madder and that will make me happy. And then if they follow me, then I'll block them.
All right.
That's the way I like to do it. Anyway, you know what you need under your tree this Christmas, Brian?
Water.
No, what?
You got to water the tree.
Well, you don't need that under your tree. What are you going to take a watering can and just sprinkle under your tree? You got a poor thing in the stand, but you under your tree, like where the presents go. I'm talking under.
Something to vacuum up all these pine needles.
Well, I'll tell you what. That's another thing. We need to get a goddamn sponsorship for a vacuum because whether you're vacuuming pine needles or pubic hair, you need to get that shit up. And where I was going in this case was if you'd like to trim your spruce for the holidays, gentlemen out there, if you'd like to cut down your fir tree or trim back your fucking gladiolas or whatever the fuck other analogy I can make, I can think of no better way to do it than the fine products from Manscaped. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, headlined by the main event, the greatest personal grooming tool ever, the Lawnmower 2.0. Manscaped can remove those pine needles from your bush when you need it the most. And I'll tell you, here's another thing. We've talked about not smelling in the summertime when you got all the peat moss growing and the swamp and, all the things molding and mildewing and multiplying. We talked about in the wintertime when you go out and you're wet, all that soggy, straw all over the top of you and it's wet and then you go and you catch cold, right? But we haven't talked about one of the other incredible side effects of the Lawnmower 2.0 and manscaping in general. Do you know that when you trim, let's say you've got a giant oak tree, Brian, but you've got a bunch of undergrowth around it at the base of it. You've got bushes and you've got all those things that spring up on the fence row and it's all around that beautiful oak tree and you can't really see the base of it. But when you trim back, when you trim back all that underbrush and all that undergrowth and all those weeds and all those bushes, not only does that oak tree look bigger around, but it looks taller. It's a much more impressive oak tree without weeds all around the base of it. So I encourage everybody, if you're a male, you got to get this. If you're a female, you got to get it for your man. Manscaped.com has the complete line of a Lawnmower 2.0, the plow, and all the lotions and potions and crop mop ball wipes and things to make you smell good, feel good, be slicker than cum on a gold tooth, and your oak tree will be standing taller and prouder than ever before without that pesky undergrowth at the base of it. If you go to manscaped.com, enter the promo code JCE, you will get 20% off plus free shipping and a free travel bag. What more can we do for the crotch in your life?
I don't know how to follow that up. I can't even look at those crop mop ball wipes without hearing your voice saying it.
Crop mop ball wipes. They're pH balanced. And I'll tell you what, when your P and your H gets out of balance, holy shit.
Mop that crop.
Milk lemonade. Anyway.
What?
What?
What did you say?
Milk lemonade. Around the corner, fudge is made.
What is that?
What? Are you out of your mind?
No, what is it? Is that a Dr. Seuss thing? What is that?
Well, it may be, I don't know, one of those maybe Olympic gymnast doctors, not Dr. Seuss, but milk lemonade, around the corner, fudge is made. You figure it out or look it up. I've got things to do. Anyway, I got an email. I got to read this real quick. This is from Case, and it's long. I won't read all of it, but enough of it. He's talking about wrestling. I love the sports aspect and always will. I'm a sports fan and have been since I was in 3rd grade, and watching wrestling helped me understand sports better and vice versa. While the NFLs of the world can still be ambiguous on who the good guys or bad guys are, professional wrestling seldom has that issue. Whatever implied fakeness exists is subsided by how the bad guys involved get to be at their most honest, which is not giving a shit about pissing off the fans or having to worry about repercussions of such actions. This is something that has carried over more and more over the years in sports that allegedly don't have predetermined outcomes. I knew who the bad guys were and why I should be mad at them. Cornette and the Midnight Express attacked the Rock and Roll Express, those chicken shit assholes. Eddie Gilbert helped some Russian representatives ambush Bill Watts so they could place the symbol of communism over his body. Fuck that guy. Today, we have jazz hands. We have entertainers. We have people who aren't good at being good or bad. They're just sort of there doing these circus acts and trying to manufacture some stupid-ass catchphrase. When's the last time fans got mad at a wrestler for doing bad guy wrestler things in the ring? Right, sure, MJF comes off as a grade A prick, which is why AEW seems content to have him be something other than that. But when's the last time people got angry at someone? When's the last time some true emotion came out of the audience? I don't mean, why are they pushing that guy crap, but something genuine. It's hard for me to think of anything, which is why I congratulate masked Smoky Mountain wrestling Nazi guy from the 1990s. He has accomplished what Kenny whatever the buck and the young fucks haven't, and that's get people emotionally invested in booing someone. And he put a link to the Twitter. This was a few months ago, several months ago, but they were going ballistic on Twitter because somebody took a clip from one of the Smoky Mountain shows. We had the Stormtrooper wrestle Dixie Dynamite, right?
Yeah.
And you remember the controversy. And there's the guy in the with the swastika and the Nazi fucking boots and everything and the Nazi helmet, the Stormtrooper. And he's wrestling Scott Armstrong, who was Dixie Dynamite, who was masked and had the cape, and literally his entire outfit was all the Confederate flag. And they were actually not only mad about this 25 years later on Twitter, this guy was mad about this, but proof that Jim Cornette is a racist. He booked these gimmicks and he booked such a thing. The Stormtrooper, for those newer listeners, I can't even remember. You know what? Now I remember, but now I'm not going to say his name. I was going to say I don't remember what his name was, but I do now. But I won't say it because it might get him fired at this point if he has a real job now, 25 years later. But he had worked this gimmick because he lived in North Carolina and had worked the gimmick for Continental, where, you know, he wasn't German, so he put a mask on because he didn't look German. But otherwise, it's the Von Brauners, the fucking, you know, shoulder strap black thing with the swastika and the goddamn, you know, the German flag and the fucking Heil Hitler, whatever the, you know, what's the goddamn salute called?
Sig Heil.
There you go. He's doing this shit, and he was actually on one of those tapes that was circulated from Continental in the late 80s. He was part of Ron Wright's stable when Ron had the Moondog and fucking the Stormtrooper and who knows what. It was the dying days, right?
It was actually USA when Ron USA. Back in Knoxville. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, this guy had called and said, hey, you know, can I do TV for you? Sure. He said, well, I got a Stormtrooper gimmick. I said, okay, bring it. They thought that I legitimately came up with a guy called him the Stormtrooper, had an outfit made, and had him go out there so that he could fight Dixie Dynamite. No, actually, it was because he already had the shit. We only paid him $75. We wouldn't have paid to have an outfit made. He had the fucking gimmick already, and we didn't think of it. Nobody else did either. And there's all the people cheering for Dixie Dynamite because that was before everybody all of a sudden started hating the Confederate flag. And nobody thought anything of it. And 25 years later, this guy is mad on Twitter over that. And as we just referenced in the previous segment, as they say, look who the fucking president is for real in real life.
And by the way, it was all funded by a Jewish man from my old neighborhood. So
yes, from New York.
Yeah.
Anyway, so case continues. Seriously, that Twitter dude bro is more pissed at the fact that someone wore a Nazi mask in the 1990s, back when doing such a thing was still frowned upon by basically everyone, instead of the some fine people shitheads we have running things now. He's more pissed at that than what Seth Rollins is doing or what Bray Wyatt and his band of production truck stooges are doing. Not sure of that reference, but anyway. Well, and seriously, why are people in the production truck helping a wrestler fuck over another wrestler? I don't know why they play the music on the run-ins either, unless they're psychic. Case says if someone pulled that shit on Magnum TA would punch Bob Geigel again and then go after the JCP production guys. Well, except for maybe Jackie Crockett. This is what's wrong more than anything else when it comes to today's wrestling. It lacks a soul. It's this homogenized product that no longer screams fake sport, but instead just screams fake, period. Where are the heels? Where are the bad guys who aren't interested in being cool? Who aren't trying to get their vocal spot in so people can sing along in the audience? I think the last time I found myself being mad at a bad guy was maybe 1996 when Shane Douglas damn near caused a riot during an ECW event, tossing the injured member of the Pit Bulls to the mat while his head was screwed to some halo device.
He grabbed him by the halo. That was actually,
yeah, he grabbed him. For the newer viewers also, was it Gary Wolf? Well, that was the Pit Bull that had, yeah. He had legitimate neck surgery and his head was screwed into a fucking halo. And he was about to get it taken off, but still, his head was screwed, did I mention, into a fucking halo gimmick, like he'd been in a goddamn plane crash, and they had Shane actually grab it and jerk him to the ground with it, and that was fucking heavy, right? Anyway, he says Shane was easy to boo while watching that. When Joey Ryan plays Magic Dick, I don't boo him. I boo what wrestling has become. When Kenny Omega exists in a ring, I don't boo him. I boo what wrestling has become. When Mance Warner falls victim to an invisible invader and flies backwards through a table in the ring, I don't boo him. I boo what wrestling has become. Bring back the Andersons and Ric Flair breaking Dusty Rhodes' leg and me hoping the good guys get them back for it. Bring back King Kong Bundy injuring Hulk Hogan's ribs and me looking forward to Hulk kicking the shit out of him. Bring back Larry Zbyszko being himself. Heck, I'd take a masked Nazi at this point and he'd at least be easy to boo. Then again, with too many of today's we're so smart fans, they'd probably get him over as a good guy, especially in today's toxic environment of Trump and dude bros. who on the Impact roster or AEW roster or MLW roster or ROH roster or any of the WWE rosters du jour or even the NWA roster have managed to rile pro wrestling fans such as they are today more than a manager turned promoter turned color commentator doing a couple podcasts a week and some masked Nazi from 25 goddamn years ago that probably lost to Tim Horner. There you have it.
And I think it would have been 27 years ago, to be fair.
20. Well, there you go. And I guarantee you, the Stormtrooper will not be booked on NWA Power as long as Liver Lip Lagana is around. I'll guarantee you that. But anyway, all these things are why I've come to the conclusion that my interest in at least being involved in wrestling is at an all-time low. I still like the good stuff, but you have to look to find it. I don't want to be involved in really anything anymore because that horse has left the barn after this last fiasco. And the fan reaction now is as much off-putting as the staged choreographed matches because they are literally applauding a performance rather than being emotionally invested in a fucking fight 98% of the time. And that's why, to me, it's so dead and lifeless and passionless. There's not only really no legitimate hatred anymore, but there's no legitimate love. You'd think that the fucking cosplay fans that get worked up, hopping up and down mad because that I tell the truth about their favorite wrestler and they emotionally sound like 14-year-old girls that used to cheer for the rock and roll. You'd think that they would have all the passion it would be necessary for the legitimate love, just like the legitimate hate, but they don't love them. They just love their love of them. And they hate it when I tell the truth about them because then that makes people think that they love the wrong people. Does that make any sense?
How important do you think it is for a heel to cheat in their matches?
What? How? If you're a heel and you have a match and you do not cheat, how the fuck are you a heel?
Yep.
So it's not like important. It's like the thing that you do. You don't
just do flips with the other guy back and forth?
A heel never takes over on a babyface face-to-face. He never wins the fucking battle of the sucker. If there's a fucking hand stuck out and somebody goes for it and the guy gets kicked in the stomach, it better be the babyface doing the kicking. A heel never takes a babyface down from the front or fairly or on a level playing field. A heel doesn't out-wrestle a babyface. I'm not talking about every move, but in the end, he doesn't, which is why he has to resort to a shortcut or to cheat or distract the referee or whatever the fuck. No. And as a matter of fact, on the pecking order, the babyface is always stronger than the heel. The heel is always stronger than a manager, and the manager is actually, and the referee is always stronger than the manager also. The manager is the only one that can put everybody over. Anyway.
You want a good heel right now? Have a guy who goes in there against one of the flippy guys and doesn't do any of those flips.
And just slaps him out of the air.
Yeah, just completely no high spots. He's going to wrestle him. He's going to cheat. He's going to get him from behind. Every time he goes to the top rope, he's going to knock him off. That'll upset those fans a little bit.
Anyway.
Grab a headlock.
Grab a headlock. Take him over. Have a wrestling match. Well, we'll talk about the new style of wrestling in a second. But while we're on the old style, just real quickly. Last weekend in Knoxville, I want to thank everybody that came out. I had a great time. I want to thank publicly Matt Segment of the Heat Seekers. He didn't have to do this. This is the first, and he says only, wrestling event that he has ever promoted. And he had help, there for the folks at D1 Sports there and Devin Driscoll and those guys in Knoxville with the location and et cetera. And a lot of people donated their time and effort, but Matt just decided Bobby Eaton is the greatest guy in the history of wrestling. Also one of the best wrestlers ever. And he doesn't realize it. Bobby doesn't. And Matt just thought that he deserved something where a lot of people came together and told Bobby what they meant to him or what he meant to him, and how great he was. So that's what we did last weekend, and you can still get the replay on Fight TV. I know they did have some audio issues. Imagine that, a live wrestling event on the internet with audio issues. You would never imagine such a thing. But the cleaned up copy is available up now. And if you go to Fight TV and order that, the money from Fight TV goes to Bobby also. This whole thing was not only a tribute to and a night of appreciation for Bobby Eaton, but Bobby got the gate. Everybody donated their time and effort. And we raised some money for the American Cancer Society, too, with Dennis Condrey on the photo ops. But anyway, so everybody got there early in the afternoon. Brian Thompson was bringing Bobby from Nashville and Dundee, and Dundee knew about it, but he didn't say anything. The whole premise, as we've talked about, is that Bobby did not know this show was happening. He thought he was just coming to just another autograph session. And everybody kept it from him because Bobby, I envy him so much, is not on the internet. And, if you're not on the internet, you didn't know this was taking place because the whole thing was don'ttellbobby.com. So we're all in the room, and we'll talk about everybody. Kevin Kelly was supposed to be there, but he got sick on the way back from Japan, had to call in the night before. He couldn't make it, but we missed him. But Joe Kazana was there, Stephen P. New was there, Bo James was there, Dundee, Dennis Condrey, Tom Pritchard, Les Thatcher, the Barbarian, Tracy Smothers, Bobby Fulton, Gary Capetta, William Regal and Dave Taylor drove up from Atlanta. So anyway, when Brian brings Bobby in, we're all standing around and we do the surprise and applaud thing, and he's just standing there with that look on his face like, well, that was nice of him to clap when I came in the door. What's going on? He still didn't get it. And everybody came over and told him, Bobby, it's for you. It's all for you. This is your show, blah, blah, blah. And you should have seen the reaction. Because he genuinely doesn't believe he deserves all this, or that, people would go to this length.
Let me stop you there, because you said something a little earlier. You said that, I forget the exact way you said it, but, Bobby's, one of the greatest guys in the history of the business, and he doesn't know it. I mean, does he not accept that he's as good as he was? Does he know that he was really good, but he just doesn't think of it? How does he think of himself as a wrestler?
Well, it's kind of like an all shucks, don't say that, I don't want to hear it because you'll embarrass me. He knows, I think he knows that he was good because so many people said it for so long and drummed it into his head. But at the same time, he would see his flaws and doesn't think that he was as good as they think he was, basically. But he's just still astonished that, it was like Lance. Lance Russell was like that when he was doing the Fan Fest a few years before he passed away. And people from California or Canada or England would come up and quote Memphis wrestling lines, and he was just flabbergasted and astonished that people still cared after all that time and thought that much of what they did until the very end. He was that way every time. And he'd have people lined up around a fucking building, as Bobby did Saturday, to fucking meet him and get his autograph or get a picture or whatever, and he'd still be just astonished. Well, I can't believe it. But he's that kind of guy. So anyway, after the autographs and the meet and greets and everything, there's a nice show. Dr. Tom Pritchard has some of his JPWA students there, the Jacobs Pritchard Wrestling Academy. And here's another thing I was going to bring up. There's a lot of people that want to get in the wrestling business, supposedly want to be wrestling stars. And because they happen to live in New Jersey, they'll just say, okay, I'm going to go to and I'm not knocking anybody specifically or any school specifically. But if they live in New Jersey, they say, I'm just going to go to the closest wrestling school to me, right? And it's run by the friend of a guy who was once pushed into a job, match against a fucking star who we don't remember anymore. It's that level of removal from learning from a top wrestling talent. Tom Pritchard is running this school in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I was shocked at the number of people who are not moving in from out of state and taking advantage of being able to be trained directly by Tom Pritchard. These people if you think you have anything, and I'm not just plugging Tom here, but, any reputable trainer, but if you think you have what it takes. If you can look in the mirror and say, I should be on television, and with my size and my weight and my athletic ability and my age, and I think I can do this, but I'm just going to go to the closest school because, you know, what the fuck, is just like going to the dry cleaners. Why, you know, go across town to get your suit pressed better? Instead of, you've got the opportunity to enroll in this school now that they've got it up and going, and be trained by Tom Pritchard, not only a major territory talent, former WWF star, then the trainer, the head trainer for so many years that started out breaking in The Rock and Kurt Angle and
Vince.
Well, and Vince, he trained Vince, for fuck's sake. Vince McMahon said, I want this guy to train me to, you know, because I'm going to start working. Now that he's up and running, people ought to be moving to Knoxville. And I can't believe that they're not. Well, I don't say they're not, but I can't believe, because he said, oh, we still got some spaces. I said, are you booked up? No, we got some room. And that's what Glenn Jacobs is giving that back, because that's basically what he did. Instead of a wrestling school, he moved to Knoxville, Tennessee 25 years ago to be a star in wrestling and learn from every veteran in the business. The Rock and Roll Express and the Armstrongs and, you know, me and the Dirty White Boy and Tracy Smothers and all those guys. You know, that's where Glenn got his PhD in wrestling. And now he's giving other people a chance. So I just wanted to mention, maybe it's just a lack of publicity because they're just getting started. But when I heard that they had spots open for people, new students, I said, holy shit. Knoxville is, move there. The women are pretty. It's the University of Tennessee. The cost of living is fucking minute. And learn how to be a great pro wrestler instead of going to the McDonald's of wrestling school down the corner.
And now that Lance Storm has closed his school, if you were thinking of going there, go to Knoxville. It's a lot nicer weather.
Well, that's right. Yeah, Lance just closed. And my God, you know, of course it was in Canada, but still some people put up with that sort of thing. But you would get, you know, there's one less place you can be actually trained hands-on by a guy who has done it, not only knows how to do it, but has done it. And that's few and far between. Anyway, as I said, William Regal and Dave Taylor came up. We had a ceremony for Bobby at midway through the show and gave him a championship belt, and everybody came out and said a few things. And William Regal reminded everybody he was 25 years old and he had just come to this country in WCW. And, you know, he was able to get teamed up with Bobby, who he said taught him so much about tag team wrestling and the whole Blue Bloods thing. You know, if everybody thinks that William Regal was always a grizzled old veteran, but he was a kid at that point and he'd just come to America, and Bobby really had an impact on him as far as teaching him how to work a more American style, even than the European style that he was used to. So, and, you know, Regal's not a bad hand himself, but he recognizes what Bobby did for him. And Les Thatcher, of course, Uncle Les, still, I think, has the all-time people record for the Chilhowie Park Amphitheater, as he will tell you and remind you. You know, it was great to see Les Thatcher again because, once again, you know, Les and Knoxville go together, and he lived in Cincinnati for so many years, but he's moved back down there now, and he, from the time that he was Whitey Caldwell's partner to the time that he hosted Southeastern, the Smoky Mountain Run, you know, he's really been a part of wrestling in Knoxville now for 50 years. He went in first in 69, probably with John Kazana. And, you know, and nobody tells a story like Les does. That's the thing I was going to mention is I love these stories that guys tell when they get together. That's different than when you have normal civilians, people not in the wrestling business, you know, getting together, telling stories at a barbecue or whatever. It just doesn't sound like the wrestling stories. Because Bobby Eaton reminded Bobby Fulton of the time it was on a WCW TV taping, or Crockett TV taping, rather. And somehow they got crossed up, and Bobby Fulton was going to take Bobby Eaton over with a headlock off the buckles, but somehow he pushed off. He went the wrong way, and Bobby Fulton just fell right smack with all his weight on the side of Bobby Eaton's head. And boom, and when he did that, it helps to know that Bobby Eaton had not been able to hear out of his right ear for like 5 years. But when Bobby Fulton fell on the side of his head with all his weight, it knocked a big hunk of shit. Something, Bobby didn't know what, but something came out of, and it cleared his hearing up. And to this day, he can hear better in his right ear than he could 30 years ago.
I'm guessing he didn't
I see you have no reaction to
I'm
this.
guessing he didn't go to the ear, nose, and throat guy when you were on the road in Mid-South.
Oh, God, no. Well, no, here's another thing. So Bobby Fulton, this was Marietta, Georgia, at the Cobb County Civic Center. I can't remember who they were wrestling because it wasn't the midnight. It may have been Butch Reed and Ron Simmons. It may have been. It was some big-ass guys. But anyway, Bobby Fulton somehow got dropped on his head and got his bell rung and finished the match. And really didn't know anything was amiss, and they got back in the locker room, and he sits down over in the corner, and I look, and he's holding his head, and he's rocking back and forth and starting to talk to somebody, but not really anybody, out loud. And suddenly he gets up, and he's starting to walk around the room in a circle, and he breaks out in tears. Now he's crying. He's walking around the locker room in a circle, and he's basically going, who is it? Who is it? Who is it? I'm like, what? And I grab him, Bobby, do you know who I am? And he's looking at me like, with his mouth open, like, I should, but I don't really. And what the fuck? So, we sit him down, and I think somebody went and got an ice pack, because that's the thing that you do in a situation like that. You go get an ice pack, right? That's what we always used to do. That was pretty much all we knew to do, is get him some ice. And son of a bitch, he sat down about 5 or 10 minutes later. He knew who everybody was. And there was nobody suggested. I mean, somebody said, hey, you want to go to the emergency room? Well, nobody ever wants to go to the emergency room because it's miserable going to the emergency room, right? And wrestlers especially don't want to go to the emergency room because they'll get recognized. And we didn't know all this shit then. This was 1990. So some guys gave him the same advice that I got when I got my bell rung on a Raw taping when I had a tug of war with Randy Savage with the tennis racket, and I flew backwards when he jerked it away from me to sell it and didn't realize the steps were there, and bam, into the metal steps. Couldn't get up for a while. And then afterwards they said, oh, you need to go to the doctor? I said, no, I'm okay. They said, well, just stay up. That's what they told Bobby. When you go back to the hotel, stay up for a few hours. Don't go to sleep. Okay. So that's what Bobby did. He went to the hotel and didn't go to sleep for a few hours and wrestled the next day. I went to the hotel, didn't go to sleep for a few hours, was sitting there reading a book and had like clear liquid, not even snot, but just clear liquid that had kind of a funny smell just start running out of my right nostril about 4 a.m. We never went to the doctor. You didn't do that back then. There may be an explanation for what's going on now because of that. I don't know. Go ahead.
How different would things have been, let's say, in Crockett Promotions, if there had been a doctor on staff and you guys knew then what you know now about concussions, and they pulled anyone who got a concussion, they couldn't work for, 10 days, let's say.
Oh, fuck. I don't know what would have happened. A lot of those cards would have got fucked up. I mean, it wasn't like guys getting concussions, same guy every 2 weeks, but I would think just because it was a contact sport. I mean, the Barbarian, every time the Barbarian would do and Barbarian was there last weekend, by the way, wonderful segue there. Great to see him. But every time he'd do the fucking deal where they hit him on the head with a chair and he didn't sell it, he probably had some kind of brain damage. But nobody, as long as you literally were ambulatory and could leave the arena under your own power and seem to remember most people's names in the locker room, they didn't think a thing of it.
Wow,
there you go.
Changed, yeah.
Anyway, I mentioned superstar Bill Dundee was there. Of course, he's Bobby's father-in-law, so he almost had to be. No, I kid. Dennis Condrey came up. Gary Capetta came up to announce he never knew why I named him the world's most dangerous announcer.
He didn't watch Letterman?
He did not watch. I was a Letterman fan, and obviously Paul Schaefer, the world's most dangerous band, and Letterman did that because he was from Indianapolis, and Dick the Bruiser was the world's most dangerous wrestler. But when I did, because I thought Gary Capetta, his gesticulations and his bouncing up and down, and his size in general, he reminded me of Paul Schaefer at the time, because Schaefer wasn't bald then. I'd explain that to him later on in life. You know where that comes from, don't you, Gary? No, I thought you made it up. Let's see. Mark James was there, my cohort in the Tuesday Night at the Gardens and Rags, Paper, and Pens books. And it was good to see him. And wanted to especially mention Tracy Smothers. They just made the announcement on the internet, I guess a couple of days ago as we taped this, but I had heard that he was sick, and then I saw him Saturday night. But Tracy apparently has been having chemotherapy for it's a lymphoma of some description. He's got cancer. And he said that the cancer was treatable, but the chemotherapy is what was about to kill him. And everybody recognized that he was not, as spry and looking as good as he has in the past times we've seen him. But at the same time, this has been going on now for just a little while. And he still made the effort to get there and be there. And obviously everybody wishes, him a quick recovery and to get through this shit as quickly as possible. He did say the doctor said, besides the diagnosis, his body has gone through a lot of trauma. And Tracy told me in 1995, he'd had 12 concussions. So, he's put a lot of mileage on his body. And I almost hate to tell this next story because it sounds bad after that, but he credited me, gave me credit. He still appreciates it. He's not mad at me for it. But I'd even forgotten this. He gave me credit for him staying in the business. He was going to quit the business in 1992 when he got free from WCW. And he was going to go back to maybe coaching, a high school coach or whatever. But he and Steve had been the Wild Eyed Southern Boys, obviously, in WCW. And then when they went through the kick, who was it that decided they were too Southern? And the Southern Boys, then the whole company was too Southern. They wanted to remove that impression. So they had the Southern Boys. Dusty had them buy a ranch in Wyoming and become the Young Pistols or whatever. I can't remember who was in charge at that time. But anyway, they had been so disgusted that Tracy was going to quit the business and go back to coaching or go try to start coaching. And it just so happened I'd been keeping an eye on everybody that I was interested in, that, I was under contract to WCW, that I knew eventually they'd let go Ricky Morton and, all the other guys so we could reunite to rock and roll. And I was keeping an eye on the Southern Boys. And when Steve got free, that's when he got the chance to go to the WWF. And the famous story, I asked Tracy, I said, he was there 3 months, wasn't he? Tracy said 2. Steve never liked to travel. The Armstrongs, most of them didn't like to be away from home for very long and their family. And I don't blame them. I identify. And Steve got on that loop in the WWF in 1992 when some guys weren't making a lot of money and it was just miserable trips anyway. And he woke up one day in a hotel room and he told me himself later on, he said, I looked in the mirror and the mirror cracked and he just got a plane ticket and went home to Pensacola. So anyway, but he had gotten the opportunity and Tracy was, now he was free, but he was a single. And I hadn't been able to get Brad Armstrong. So I said, I think Tracy can be the guy. And honestly and truthfully, I think Tracy did a better job at that point in time than Brad would have.
I agree.
And he was fresher in that territory. Brad had been there in the 80s. And the people knew him and liked him, but I think Tracy was a brand new face and just as good for the spot. And immediately we had a ceremony and burned all the Young Pistol shit, and he still had all his Southern Boy shit. And yes, he had the Confederate flag, and everything he wore was Confederate flag because we were going for a baby face here, and this was East Tennessee. And the Wild-Eyed Southern Boy, and we brought him in and told people who he really was. Tracy Smothers from Springfield, Tennessee, and did the videos and let him do his promos. And the reason why he got over was because the whole hardest working man in show business thing that he did later on when he was sellout Smothers as a heel was not a rib. There was not one guy, and this is not knocking anybody else's effort, but in 4 years in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, maybe with the exception of Terry Funk, who's a lunatic, nobody ever worked harder every single time he walked through the curtain, whether it was 100 people or 1,000 people or 5,000 or whatever the fuck, than Tracy. Harder, longer, put more into it, cared more about it, was more excited when he had a good match, was more down on himself when he had a bad match, took things more seriously, was never late except if it was a goddamn blizzard. Somebody you could count on. Tracy Smothers, he clawed his way over in that spot, and he was perfect for it. And I think he should be recognized for that.
And he would have all those matches, and he would work really hard, and then he would go out to the gimmick table and smile at every single person. And
yes,
I've seen him give away as much as he sold. And I'm not saying it's a wise thing to do, but it was more just, at times it just seemed like he just liked people being happy. I mean,
well, yeah, and he wanted to make it go. And then actually, when we closed down, he knew this woman in Eastern Kentucky that had a bit of money, and he said, I can get her to die. I said, no, I don't want to go down that road of starting to have other people, money involved that can't necessarily take the hit as possibly as well as a millionaire record mogul can. But he wanted it to go. And as long as he was flying the Smoky Mountain Wrestling flag as much as he was flying the Southern Boy flag. It was, he did everything he could to help the company go, to get whoever he had to work with. If it was a new heel, Bruiser Bedlam, good God, I can't tell you the amount and variety of potatoes that Bruiser Bedlam fed to Tracy Smothers. But he got Bruiser Bedlam over. He got Chris Candido over. And Chris was easier to work with, but he was taking a younger guy and getting him over. He did everything that he needed to do as a professional in any situation he was in. So, but anyway, he's gonna beat this too, because Tracy's too fucking nuts to goddamn sell anything. And Bobby Fulton the same way. It's been on the internet over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, Bobby's diagnosed recently with throat cancer, and I'm going to get an update over Christmas on how he's doing, because he was going back for some more appointments. They were going to plan the manner of how they're going to address everything. But that's another reason I'm going to be there March 14th. If Bobby Fulton and Bobby Eaton and Dennis Condrey, plus others, are in the building, I'm going to be there. But it's always fun to see Bobby. Like I said, either just eavesdropping on his conversation with Bobby Eaton, or reminiscing about all the stupid shit we used to do to each other when he set my pants on fire in Washington while I was wearing them and shit like that. That's, at this point, that is my most enjoyable part of pro wrestling, is just sitting with all the guys that aren't wrestling anymore. But we did get a chance also, and I did get a chance to tell Bobby, thank you for everything he'd done for me, because as a manager, I had to go out and say, with the Midnight Express, the greatest tag team in the world, he's the guy that made me not be a liar. So it was easy to do that spot. Golden Boy Joe Kazana was there, who we have to thank for the 1 hour of John Kazana's Wide World of Wrestling that still exists from Knoxville before the Southeastern era, because he's the one that had squirreled that away. And Bo James was there, the unofficial historian. Actually, he's the official historian now, probably of the East Tennessee territory. Bo has lost 110 pounds, I think he said, something like that. He's barely over 400 now. Broomsh.
I'm going to let you own that one.
Wait a minute. Come on now. Hey, wait a minute. Yes, and I'm kidding.
That was the weight falling off.
I jest. No, Bo has never made probably the PWI 100 list for his in-ring, but he has really tracked down a lot of the history of East Tennessee, and I've got a couple of unheard Whitey Caldwell and Ron Wright stories. Real briefly. The reason why I'm so fascinated with the East Tennessee territory is because it is really, even more than the Nashville booking office, because Jerry Jarrett had kind of jazzed things up a little bit in the early 70s, but the East Tennessee territory was the last link to really not only the Pioneer era, but the Carney era wrestlers. And the guy that the homesteader on the local basis, the hero like Whitey Caldwell and the villain like Ron Wright. And yes, they had name talent come through, but the guys that really got over were the hometown folks that the people believed in as much as humanly possible. And we've talked about it. That's why they sometimes they didn't even use the blade. Ron Wright had that chisel because people they wanted to see a fight and they wanted to make sure it looked good, or elsewise they'd shit on it, right? Everybody knows that Ron Wright and Whitey Caldwell's program lasted 15 years, from the late 50s to Whitey was killed in 72 in that car wreck. And they also both lived in Kingsport, Tennessee. And that was not a small town, especially in the late 60s, early 70s, or it was not a big town. So what they did was they carefully, to preserve the image that they had built on television and in all these live events where they'd had the chain matches and the death matches, and they'd just, been a thorn in each other's sides. They actually coordinated, because they both had kids at the time. When they would move, they would make sure that they lived in different school districts, so that their kids never had to go to the same school and be caught associating together in the same classroom without fighting. That is what kind of geniuses these guys were. This is the dedication that they showed to the business and to presenting who they were to the people, or who they wanted the people to think they were. The kayfabe aspect. And I guarantee you that there were people probably that lived next door to either Ron Wright and Whitey Caldwell that were convinced that if they saw each other on the street, they would fight. But it was that kind of dedication. These guys may not have been, circus acrobats or world-class Olympic athletes or rocket scientists, but they had not lost the plot of what wrestling was. They knew what wrestling was. It was built on emotion and conflict, and the ability to make people believe an implausible situation. And that's why Whitey Caldwell, when Bo told me this also, because I knew Nancy Caldwell passed away. It was a few years ago, but she was there and she was still around. You remember when she's the one that accepted Whitey's award for most popular wrestler in the history of East Tennessee, and Ron Wright's the one that presented it to her at the Night of Legends, and there were people in the building tearing up and crying. And that was 22 years after Whitey was dead, right? Yeah. The preacher at Nancy Caldwell's funeral, talking about the family, part of his preamble, and Bo mentioned it wasn't like the preacher was a kid when Whitey passed away. The preacher was 4 years older than Whitey, right? So the preacher at Nancy Caldwell's funeral actually started out by saying, "I was like every other man in East Tennessee. I wanted to be Whitey Caldwell. Not when I was a kid, I wanted to grow up and be a wrestler. Even when I was a kid, I wanted to be Whitey Caldwell." That's the kind of hold that these guys had on the people in East Tennessee. The men wanted to be Whitey Caldwell. This preacher, still after 40 years, remembered that the most glaring impression it was made on him as a young man, it was, "I'd like to be Whitey Caldwell." Does anybody out there really think a lot of people want to be Kenny Olivier? Right? So, I mean, and this was a guy in those days, especially in the spot shows around the Tri-Cities. You had Bristol and Kingsport, Johnson City, Tennessee, but you had the Eastern Kentucky and the Western Virginia spot shows. There's a story in Pennington Gap, Virginia one time. And by the way, look that up. Anybody in the world, Google it. Pennington Gap, Virginia. It's in the western hills of the state of Virginia, almost to the North Carolina, Tennessee state line, up in the mountains. There may not be 5,000 people in Pennington Gap, Virginia today. Whitey Caldwell drew 5,000 people in Pennington Gap, Virginia in the late 60s. All the tickets were $1 and $2, right? And they had to do it out at the football field because there was no place indoors to hold something like that. But that was in the days. There were no movie theaters in these towns. You had to drive an hour to go to a movie theater. There were no chain restaurants. There might be a mom and pop diner if you're lucky, or maybe they just have a fish fry at the church. There was no live entertainment. The chances in those mountain towns, even when we started Smoky Mountain, much less the 60s, the chances of people in those mountain towns of ever seeing someone that had been on television was remote, minute even. So these guys were gods when they came in, and Whitey Caldwell was everybody's hero. And when Ron Wright tried to fuck him, that's why these people tried to fucking stab Ron Wright with fucking rusty fishing knives and succeeded on more than one occasion. It was that level of commitment. And you couldn't manufacture it. It had to grow organically with what these guys did, but you can't replicate it anymore because everybody's so full of shit and all the fans know it. The last thing, the Whitey Caldwell sold out his last show after he died because on the strength of it was, I mean, newspaper and television news headlines when he was killed. I was coming back from a match in Greenville to Kingsport, and he was killed in a car wreck. So it was all over the news. And what they did the following Friday night at Chilhowie Park, or the following week, rather, whatever, they announced that Ron Wright, he'd always hated Whitey. They'd always been enemies, but he had respect for him. So Ron Wright was going to take Whitey Caldwell's place. They were against Don and Al Green. Was it Les Thatcher that was Whitey's partner then? I have the clipping, but I can't reach it from here. It was on the Night of Legends special. But anyway, Ron Wright, the heel, suddenly switched babyface just because of this, with no angle, just to say, I respected Whitey Caldwell and nobody can fight his battles but me. And they fucking sold out. You know, that was commitment. That was guys that understood what wrestling was. That was guys who understood how to manipulate emotions. Never, it's just like when you get caught cheating, never admit it. Never admit that you're a work. Always keep your game face on. Make sure the people believe in what you're doing. Don't do foolishness that tickles you, because in the long run, you will not only make more money, you will be taken more seriously, but you will be more well remembered. And to this day, and that now has been 47 years, people still take those flowers by the cemetery and put them on Whitey Caldwell's grave.
Had that been done much in wrestling? Because obviously Nikita turned face after Magnum got hurt, and kind of out of respect for Magnum, who was up. And then, you know, this story with Ron Wright and Whitey. Are there other examples? I can't think of any off the top of my head of a guy either perishing or a guy getting injured and his former, just recent rival took his place, or, you know, turned face to out of respect for him?
I'm sure it has been. Those are the notable ones. I'm sure, but it hadn't been done very often, because here's the thing. You actually need a real tragedy, whether it be a real death or a real career-ending, accident like with Magnum's, for that to be done and it to work. It's not like, oh, we did an angle where we broke this guy's leg, so the heel's going to, that's been done a million times. But just have something happen and have to make chicken salad out of chicken shit in that way is few and far between. But it just reminded me again of the commitment these guys had. And they lived in the same town and they worked the same territory for all those years. And people still remember that when I would go to the station managers of the TV stations all around the territory trying to get television on, they wouldn't care about Paul Orndorff that had been at WrestleMania. They wouldn't care about Jim Cornette that had been on, TBS, but you'd mention Ron Wright and they'd become kids again. Because they believed in those guys. It was before it all went to, in their minds, all went to bullshit. Anyway, but it was fun and it was exciting and it was good for us. And, it's an amazing part of the country. And everybody knows Tennessee and the Carolinas has the longest wrestling memories, but in East Tennessee, it takes it a whole nother level.
Do you ever miss East Tennessee, living there?
Well, not now because the traffic's as bad there now as it is in Louisville. My God, I went through Morristown last year where I lived, and it's a fucking 4-lane highway through the middle of town, and there's a stoplight every 500 yards. Good God. So, I mean, I miss the Smokies. I love the mountains, but every place I've ever lived now, I've always lived in the suburbs, and the town has grown up to meet wherever it was. The last time I went to Charlotte, looked for a old house, I couldn't even find it. I couldn't wreck it. They've got a brand new interstate there now. And I hear they even have a fucking all-night gas station. But anyway, before we talk about All Elite Wrestling, what are you doing this week on your various programming?
Well, before I tell you that real quick, because a lot of people have been asking, will we be doing any more NXT reviews in the weeks ahead?
Yes, we will. We will, especially when my mail orders slow down. It's not the holidays. I don't have family in the house, and I have rested my brain after my vacation. We will be talking much more because they're kicking ass.
Oh, yeah.
NXT is kicking ass. Yeah. And I know whose ass they're kicking.
The shows have been great, and they really know how to get people over, and I'm actually curious what you think because I've really been enjoying it. But before we get there this week, on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network, of course, stay in touch with all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook, facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few shows I want to tell you about this week. The latest Super Studcast for patrons of Ron Fuller Studcast at patreon.com/Studcast. Ron welcomes the exotic Adrian Street to the show for 90 minutes of talk as only the exotic Adrian Street can deliver it. And boy, does he not like Big Daddy. Hear about that and so much more.
I heard that in the car in 1982. He was cussing Big Daddy then.
I'm surprised to hear that he came to America and he was still going off on Big Daddy.
Well, I would ask him, obviously, stories and questions, and whatever Big Daddy's name came up, it was not positive.
Hear more of that kind of positivity this week on the Super Studcast. Patreon.com/Studcast. Want to make mention of John Arezzi's Pro Wrestling Spotlight, Then and Now, where John and I each week go back through the archives and in order listen to the original classic episodes of Pro Wrestling Spotlight, review them, and there's been some amazing segments on this show. A lot of early Dave Meltzer, a lot of independent wrestlers from the Northeast that you may not know of. There's a segment with a guy named Jack the Giant Stalker last week, which was one of the most incredulous segments I've ever heard on any show. And actually this week on the show, Jim, in the studio, live, because he's on hiatus from the NWA, Paul E. Dangerously. Can I play you a few seconds of audio?
I wish you would.
While doing the show in the studio, a caller called in from a payphone, and when questioned as to why, he said his mother hated wrestling and wouldn't allow him to call from home, which led to Paul and John insisting on getting his mother on the phone, which they did later in the show. Let's hear a few moments of this.
Okay, let's see what we got here. 661-1440. Hello, you're on the air. Hello?
Yes.
Is this Jim's mom?
Yes, it is.
Jim?
Now, why would you let Jim call up this radio station?
Well, I don't care for wrestling.
So?
I think it's savage.
It's savage?
Yes.
What TV shows do you watch?
Anything else but wrestling.
Name one.
Name one?
Name one. You come from Long Island?
Yes, I do.
Well, then I'll speak slowly. Name one.
Name one? L.A. Law.
L.A. Law. Oh, good. So you like to watch defense attorneys protect rapes and murderers and people like that on the air and teach young children to grow up to be defense lawyers to defend rapists and murderers and arsonists and stuff like that, but you won't watch professional wrestling.
That's correct. Professional wrestling, it's fixed, and
I didn't know it was broken. Oh, I'm so funny. Go ahead.
And it's savage, and I think that some of these people that they have who are champions, children look up to, I think that they are disgraceful.
Disgraceful. A guy that comes on TV, works out every single morning, makes sure that he has a suntan, and tells kids to say their prayers, eat their vitamins, and go to school and do your homework and graduate college. That's disgraceful. But you watch L.A. Law with a bunch of people out in Hollywood doing cocaine and snorting things and putting things in their veins and defending rapists and murderers and arsonists on television, and you're telling me that's not disgraceful, right?
It's not as disgraceful as some of the champions you have up there.
Saying your prayers and eating your vitamins and graduating college is more disgraceful than defending arsonists and doing cocaine on the set of a television show, right?
How many of them champions do you get up there saying to eat your vitamins and go to church?
Hulk Hogan is on national television 8 times a week telling everybody, say your prayers, eat your vitamins, believe in a big man upstairs, go to college and finish and get your education before you ever think of becoming a professional wrestler, and you're telling me that none of them do it? You don't watch it, that's how. You're passing judgment on something that you never watched before.
I have watched it. I think it's a disgrace.
It's a disgrace?
Yes.
It's a disgrace. I think your speech is a disgrace. I think you're a disgrace raising a kid, not letting him call up a radio station to be on the air in Long Island, to be a hero in his high school because he got his voice on the airwaves to express his opinion on something where its champions say your prayers, eat your vitamins.
Well, there's an example.
There's an example of when Paul, before he quit caffeine.
It's an example of Paulie Dangerously live on the air in the studio. You can hear the show at pwspod.com where we review it, or hear the complete unedited original episode at patreon.com/Arezzi. It is quite the memorable 2-hour episode, as all of them are, but especially this Paulie, who again, Halloween Havoc just happened. He was replaced by the big kahuna, Oliver Humperdinck, managing the Samoans. So find out his thoughts on all of that. And of course, the 605 Super Podcast, the Mothership. I'm a bit shocked that you're not going to end the year with one of your sonic blasts of sound.
I don't have the energy.
But I guess I'll get past it. This week,
I've got to talk about this television program here in a second.
Well, that's going to take all of our energy away. But this week on the show, it should be out tomorrow as we're recording, our annual special looking at this year's class of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. As I'm currently editing it, it may end up being a 2-part episode, but we have tons of wrestling historians who vote each and every year on for a series of roundtable discussions discussing who got in, who was on the ballot that they submitted, who didn't get in, thoughts on the future and how to improve the Observer Hall of Fame, and much more. Happy to say one of the segments, and it's quite a memorable segment. I'm happy I got these two guys on the air. Jim Cornette and Scott Teal from Crowbar Press. But of course, these guys both got started in the wrestling business in a very similar way in the same territory. This is quite the conversation as a part of...
Actually not. It was not the same territory. I started on the Memphis end. Scott started the Nashville end.
So you wouldn't consider it all part of Gulas Welch. You would consider it two separate territories.
Well, but it was all part of the same company at that time, but it was two separate territories.
Well, you see that? I've been corrected, but hear more from these two historians as well as a ton of other historians. If you're into wrestling history, you're going to want to check out this episode. 605pod.com, or available wherever it is that you find your favorite podcast. And as this is the last regular experience of the year, I just want to thank everyone for the continued support of the 605 Super Podcast and all of the shows on the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network. A lot of the Cult of Cornette have supported my shows, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you to everyone.
Well, let's see if we can keep that support rolling right along when we... They're trying to fuck with us now, aren't they? All Elite with these shows. Are they just saying, fuck, you think it was bad last week? We'll show you.
Well, that's actually going to be my first question, because it's been a few weeks since we've done a review here of AEW on the show, and I know you had been DVRing and watching some of NXT. How caught up with AEW were you before this episode?
Well, no, remember, we only missed a week. I only missed a week of all, and that's when the TNT chose not to broadcast it at all, right? When they had the blackout to Spectrum or whatever. But I did go back and watch MJF's promo. And here's another thing. Is MJF still with the fucking company? Because I saw 20 minutes of goddamn, Lucha Brothers last night, but I sure didn't see fucking MJF at all. Where was he?
After that incredibly strong promo we did the week before.
Yeah, they're showing the same people every week on television. They're not even picking the right people to show every week. The ones you want to see every week, you never see them. But no, I'm caught up now on this, and then I have to go back and catch up a couple of NXTs. But I have faith in them. You know that the Undisputed Era is the best thing on the show, and the babyface segment of Ciampa and Lee is Dijak or Dijakovic or whichever Polish name he's got these days. They're incredible. They're having great matches. They're doing shit you care about. It's a professionally produced program. There's no bad surprises in that one. And I think especially Roderick Strong, Les Thatcher mentioned this in Knoxville. Roderick Strong showed how valuable he is when, what was it, 2 weeks ago, Fish got shaken up and had to get taken out of the match, and Roddy just rolled right in. Now, do you think that what would they have said? Oh, hey, Triple H or whoever's in charge, let us just go sit in the back for 30 or 45 minutes and come up with a new match, and we'll be right back. No, Roddy just rolled in because he knows how to call it in the ring. And that's why that guys like that are so valuable. And I guarantee you, he didn't miss a beat. But anyway,
and Rhea Ripley, if you're going to name people who have been breakout stars on that show, Rhea Ripley's fantastic.
Yes, and all of a sudden, boom, and now, she's the champion. Cinderella story, out of nowhere, Rhea Ripley. But that's the way you get somebody over. She made her first appearance when we'd already started watching the show, right? Had she been there before, or did she?
I think she was, again, I don't know for sure. Someone will jump on us for saying this. I think she was relatively new, at least with this persona that she had. And in the 11 weeks, 10 weeks, I don't even know how long, I guess 3 months, we've been watching, we've seen her turn into a breakout star on that program, and they know how to make stars. Whatever we want to say about the WWE, or at least NXT and Paul Levesque, when they want to make stars, they know how to make stars.
And well, let's go to the other side of the coin. I'm not going to go bit by bit on this show because it's more of the concept and just what they're doing now and why their thinking is wrong. And everybody, please feel free to try to shoot holes in this. You won't be able to because I'm right, but you can blather on. The opening match, Adam Page and Kenny Omega against the Lucha Brothers, right? And by the way, did you notice on Justin Roberts' lower third Chiron, the graphic, 23 years experience as a ring announcer?
No,
I swear to God, I freeze framed it. They're just amusing themselves now on the graphics like it's a fucking fan project here.
Well, I saw the one for Adam Page. Did you see the Adam Page one?
I didn't see that.
It said, I'm paraphrasing. It said something along the lines of, say something funny like "Happy Holidays," HAW for holidays. So
what?
It's like, was that sent to someone? Not to be on the air that way, or was it intended to be on the air that way? You didn't see that?
Oh my God. Oh my God. I just happened to notice Justin Roberts, but at least it wasn't a rib. So they actually printed on the graphic that went on the air instructions that the guy putting together the graphic list for the Chiron guide said, well, say something funny. Oh, and they said, say something funny.
Now I'm looking for
you have to send the list to the graphic guy that inputs that, and it has to be exact with everybody spelled right. So apparently it's I Love Lamp. The Chiron guy wrote the instruction or something.
I'm going to get the exact thing while we're talking.
All right. Well, I will go on. Look here, this match, it's easy. It's the same fucking match. Kenny Olivier, he's bouncing, he's happy, he's pointing, he's making faces. The Lucha Brothers do their thing where they stop everything down and make funny hand signals to each other. And then Pentagon stood there for Kenny and Adam Page to chop him in a phony display. It's same as always. There's no heels. The fans are cheering everybody. Olivier's faces looks like he's going to pass kidney stone. Then he does a dive. The match doesn't make any sense. It's sloppy. They kept Page out of it mostly until he made a nice comeback. But this is not Adam Page's. This is not where he's going to get over in the midst of two Lucha guys and fucking Omega. Because it's just matches where guys that just do shit to each other and all matches look the same and they all look like they're cooperating with each other. It's not how a guy like Adam Page gets over. And we've talked about it. They've been having problems with him already, like they have a lot of other people. But if you're going to, Adam Page can get over wrestling a Dustin Rhodes. Adam Page will look horrible wrestling a Lucha Brother because it's just a clash of styles and nobody knows what the fuck to do for Adam Page in that situation. and the Lucha Brothers may be the hottest tag team in Lucha Libre in Mexico, but this ain't Mexico, and they just do the same shit everybody else does.
Okay.
As I wrote, mess, guys just doing shit to each other back and forth. Go ahead.
Here's what it said. It said, IDK, which is I don't know, make it say something like happy, HAPPYEE, holidays, HAWLIDAYS. I don't know, make it say something like happy holidays.
That was the graphic that aired on his statistics bar.
For the Hangman, Adam Page.
Well, there you go. And then finally, Adam Page accidentally hits Olivier with the buckshot lariat, and the Lucha Brothers pin him. So there's Omega's been pinned again, and now Page and Olivier are pissed at each other. Here's the thing. This is going to manifest itself in the main event, so we'll get it out here now. Here is where they're making their fatal mistake. Besides the fact that you've got a bunch of fucking guys, except for Cody Rhodes, you got a bunch of fucking guys that have only played wrestler before and have never actually booked, have never actually been matchmakers, have never actually had to push guys or give finishes or whatever. They've just done it in their fucking minds at his talent. And they've not been on any major league level. And yeah, I'm not talking about New Japan. New Japan is a completely different kettle of fish from booking an American promotion and giving other guys finishes or putting together angles or whatever. And the biggest American promotion Kenny Olivier has ever worked for was Ring of Honor when Kerry Silkin still owned it. And the Young Bucks have never been stars anywhere. And they're the ones who said, we really never got over until we just stopped doing what people told us to do, like the bookers and bosses and promoters, and started doing whatever we wanted to do. So they refused to learn anything when they were told to do it. And truthfully, it worked for them because if they did things the right way, they'd be laughed out of a fucking wrestling building and nobody would ever fucking think twice about them because they got the opportunity to do all this stupid shit. People look at them and they've gotten over, but now it's made the rest of the business look like fucking shit. But anyway, here's the problem. They are going in and assuming Omega's doing jobs. The Young Bucks are doing jobs. For these other teams, they are going in with the assumption that they are big stars and that they are over. That's where they've made their fatal mistake. Because when they get on TV, as well as seen now, that you have two choices when you get on TV. Either the same number of people still follow the program or the company as did before you got on television, which is bad news, or you make a bunch of new fans because now you're on television and now people can actually hear about you, which is the goal, right? They are assuming that everybody is in the category of we know who all these people are, and so they're stars to us. The way that their stars have been booked since the beginning of the program buries their stars to all the many more people out there who have never heard of the Young Bucks, have never heard of Kenny Olivier, have never heard of any of these fuckers except for Chris Jericho and Cody. And they're wondering, why are they saying that this team that gets beat all the time and that looks like grade school kids is the best tag team in the world? Why are they saying that this guy that looks like Harpo Marx is the best wrestler in the world and he always loses? They have shot themselves in the foot because they have bought their own publicity and deluded themselves into thinking that they are stars to the mainstream population of America or even the mainstream wrestling fan population of America, and they're not. They're indie fucking guys who got lucky for a good little hot run. Now they're finding out they don't know how to get over to a regular audience because they've never bothered to be serious about any of this shit. And especially in the Young Bucks' case, they never listened to anything they were told, and they wanted to break all the rules to get over. Well, as Lance Storm said in ECW, we broke all the rules, then we found out why there were rules. Well, right now, the Young Bucks and Kenny Olivier are finding out why there were rules. And Cody, who's already known because he's kept himself away from all the stupid shit, has now apparently been strong-armed into fucking burying himself and getting involved with these fucking idiots. We'll talk more about that in a second. But anyway.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When you look at AEW and you look at some of the guys who have broken out, like I would say MJF has more value now than he had 3 months ago before the program started.
Yeah, just what we've seen of him, everything's been brilliant.
Right. Jungle Boy, same thing.
Yes.
I would say Luchasaurus, same thing. Jericho, there's no issue there. You know, he can go to the WWE if he wanted to. But taking personal animus aside, do you think with Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks that they devalued themselves with the way they've been used in AEW and the way they've come across as opposed to people like Cody and Jericho? Like,
Yes.
I mean, do you think they have the same value to Triple H now that they did 4 months ago?
Well, because now they didn't take the money to not get involved with the billionaires, so we don't have to worry about another fucking jack off opening up a fucking wrestling promotion. That's what they were trying to give them money to bring them in the fold, not because they. Somebody may think they could make some money off Omega. I don't think anybody thinks they can make any money off the Bucks. They were trying to give go-away money. We'll sign them. They'll be with us. The billionaire will get frustrated and he won't open a company, so we don't have to worry about that for a year or two. Because that's how long it'll take to get this whole thing cleared out where they don't have any competition again. A year or two. But since they didn't want to take that money, then I'm sure that everybody involved in the WWE side of the negotiation said, okay, then it'll take a year, maybe two, before all this, the chickens come home to roost. We see through all of this fucking falderall, or the fans do, and they know they don't know what they're doing. That's what's happening now, only quicker than I thought. So Omega's been beaten again by a guy that this time because his partner fucked up, but Adam Page is a guy that they haven't hardly really been able to get over either, even though he actually has talent, unlike Omega, who cannot contain himself from all the gesticulating. Page is a good-looking kid. He just needs direction and somebody to book him right. I did not understand. Pac shows up on the screen, goes into a room with Kenny's friend, knock it off, who's got his back turned.
His
best friend,
apparently. Yeah.
He goes in there and he closes the door, and Olivier runs out panicked. And did we ever see anything again, ever?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was in the picture.
Did I miss that?
It was in the picture in picture.
What? Because as soon as the commercial comes up, I zip through. What was in the picture in picture?
So in the picture in picture, he ran back into that room that Pac had casually closed the door of with Nakazawa. I don't know what Nakazawa was doing in there, but Kenny Omega gets in there and Pac and Nakazawa are gone. And then he comes out, the Lucha Brothers kick his ass again. So now he gets beat up another time. And then Adam Page comes out and they have a weird thing backstage. But there's a lot of shit. Look, unfortunately, both shows, AEW and NXT, do a lot of stuff during the commercial break. But with AEW, it seems like they have a lot of shit that you would think you would want on the actual main broadcast that happens during these picture-in-picture commercial breaks. And I don't understand it.
Well, because they're overthinking. They're probably, well, because they've never formatted a television program before in their miserable fucking lives. They're probably thinking, oh, we'll do this that way. They'll keep looking in the commercial because they can't turn away from a second of our gold that we're giving them. As soon as that commercial pops up, I'm fast forwarded or changing.
And by the way, Nakazawa is a full-size wrestler. Kenny Omega ran back there like Pac just closed the door and he's in there with Rio or Marco Stunt or someone who has no chance against this devastating, I keep forgetting to this day if it's Pac or Pac, but I've called them both. Kenny Omega ran back there and then he just he looked like a fool again. Whether you like Omega or not, the booking of Kenny Omega in AEW has been atrocious. Atrocious. They had a guy who was a commodity, and you can't tell me that he's worth as much now as he was a few months ago.
No, because the people who have never seen these people before are going, what the fuck? And the people who have seen them before and were their fans are still thinking the same thing because they don't understand wrestling that's supposed to actually be serious and taken seriously and draw money and sell tickets and everything anyway. They just want to see the video game. So their audience their cult audience has deluded them into thinking that normal people think they're stars, and they don't. And they're finding this out now, I'm pretty sure. And then when the Butcher Baker and Candlestick Maker against Darby Allin and Cody. Another tag team match. This Darby Allin grows on me. even though we've established he is really a one of these daredevil goofs that does shit to hurt himself on purpose and sprays himself in the face with mace because he hates his life or whatever the fuck, like a South Park parody. But what a fucking athlete. And he's so graceful and he's got a look. And it's very Jeff Hardy-ish, as JR keeps saying, an enigma. Trademark. But this match was good. You could tell who the baby faces and heels were. They actually had a match that made sense because Cody was in it. Then they get heat on Cody, which was brilliant. It's like Lawler having a match with a mid-card babyface as his partner. Shine the mid-card guy at the start. Then they get the fucking heat on the star, Cody, so that he can give Darby a tag and let him make a comeback and set up another tag after he gets stopped, set up another tag to Cody. So Cody has both sold and made a comeback in this match. So a lot of attention has been on him. And then once he gets that second tag, then he really kicked it up a notch. Bing, bing, bing. They went home in a finish. He catches Blade 1, 2, 3. And the Blade, they're the Blade and the Butcher or the Butcher and the Baker or whoever the fuck they are. They're much better than Dork Order, which, believe me, that is now their new names, ladies and gentlemen. Let the memeing begin. Because the Dork Order, and how did we even know that it was going to be the Dork Order that was going to be the downfall of All Elite Wrestling this quick? But anyway, Butcher and Baker and Candlestick Maker and Alley Cat or whatever, they look good together. She's a good-looking woman. I just wish they hadn't told everybody who she was and that she was normal, and then she comes out looking like goddamn, a dominatrix Catwoman. But nevertheless,
the Butcher has a great look.
Yeah, these guys, they're better than Dork Order, and they had a good match here, but they beat them flat. And then later on, so they're pushing the wrong weird team. Anyway, the Jungle Boy training video was good. Kong had a squash for 30 seconds. We don't care. JR did a sit down with old Jungle Boy Jack Perry, and he's a likable kid. I'd like to have seen him smile a little bit more in that. And he you can tell he's not a fireball personality in real life. It doesn't seem like, because he's just kind of very plainly spoken, like a lot of the kids now, because they get to read their phones and everything. They don't actually tell stories and adopt personalities. But anyway, I'm liking it. We'll get more to that.
You skipped right past the Awesome Kong thing, and I only bring it up, and I know there's more to talk about later, but the Brandy Rhodes stuff, I know I've talked about it a little more than you've watched.
Well, I was waiting for the second segment on that. She comes out, and yeah.
Okay.
That's actually where she wasn't too offensive in the first part.
It's just so theatrical. It's just so acting school. It's just so practiced. It's not connecting with the audience either. At least if I don't like it, you could go, well, this audience likes it. No, even that audience doesn't like it. So, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, I'm just wondering, because next up was Jericho against Jungle Boy, 10-minute time limit. Apparently Jungle Boy got a fall when Marco Stunt counted it last week. Now they got a 10-minute till you can't beat me in 10 minutes. And this shit sounds familiar. Were we not discussing shit in a lot like this? Who came up with 10 minutes before? Was it them or was it me first?
You did it first, either 2 or 3 weeks ago on The Experience. Pretty much exactly what they did, you booked.
Well, at least Chris listens. And not only listens, but hears. Anyway, they imagine that the biggest star in the company, Chris Jericho, started in a match right before 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at the top of the hour to prevent switching around. Very good. Here's what Jungle Boy did wrong. Here's how I would critique him if he was an OVW, because as we've said, he's got all the potential in the world and he can be a star and he needs to be that underdog babyface kid. Here's where he made his mistake. When Jericho was giving him spots where Jungle Boy would shine, did you notice how he was just walking off looking cool and looking casual about it? Like, yeah, No, that started subliminally getting heat with him, with viewers such as me, because the way this story is going to be told is later on he's going to be getting his ass waltzed across Texas, and it's only through his resourcefulness and toughness that he makes it the 10 minutes. So he should never, ever have had the attitude that anything he was doing was easy or that he was hot dogging or doing anything but being serious as a heart attack and being animated and passionate and aggressive instead of walking off like, yeah, that was cool. I did that. Go back and watch it thinking that now or noticing that and see what I mean.
Yeah, especially because of the 10-minute time limit.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you're in a match with the champion, you do that. That's still wrong, but you only have 10 minutes. Make it work. And I got to say, though, if that bothered you, and I shouldn't say it bothered me, but I was like, ooh, stop showing his family. Because no matter what was happening to him, his mom laughed at everything. Yeah. Whether he's getting his ass kicked, his mom's sitting back having a great time.
Yeah. And so they should have not have been ever shown. They should have got a fake family if they were going to do that, or do what every other wrestler has done since the dawn of time. Smarten your family up and tell them how to fucking react. Or in the case of Danny Hodges' father, don't smarten him up and have him cut fucking Angelo Savoldi and require 60-something stitches because he's healing. Anyway, I would also, Jericho was leading this all the way through. There were a couple times where he was really having to communicate with old Jungle Boy longer than he should have, but he covered it well for the naked eye. Every time he would tell Jungle Boy to fire up the weak gut shots with not only no force behind them, but also it doesn't look like a poor angle, just limp rag gut shots. When Jericho would say fire up, he should have immediately thrown a hard gut shot, boom, and then crumpled Jungle Boy to both knees and start to crawl away. And Jericho could sell it for a second and grab him by the back of the head, where then Jungle Boy could fire back with a backwards elbow in the gut, and Jericho could sell it again, and Jungle Boy could stagger to his feet and go to grab Jericho, where Jericho could thumb him in the eye and cut him back off. That's fire up. Start fighting back on me, and I will have to cheat to get you down, not limp, ragged, fucking limp penis goddamn gut shots. Jungle Boy has a chance to draw money, so that's where they need to start getting harder on him now instead of giving him a participation trophy and, oh, everybody's great. Now's when somebody needs to be screaming at that motherfucker and belittling him till he gets the fucking picture because he's got a chance to make some money. But Jericho dictated the pace. He had Jungle Boy fight from underneath. He did the first pull-up, the only pull-up, about 4 minutes in. He hit his finish, covered him 1, 2, then pulled him up. And that was perfect. Just one was not too much, but it established that, okay, Jungle Boy got his one out because Jericho's taking him so lightly. He would have beat him there with that finish. Jericho is the world champion, but Jericho got cocky. So that was the one they needed to establish that. And then they needed to get rid of the distraction outside. They needed to get rid of the fucking kid stunt. They didn't need any attention on anybody else outside, but they all have groups. So they did the Hager interference to get some heat and knock that fucking goofy stunt out and then get them all kicked out of ringside. So that was perfect. This was Jericho's whole thing all the way through. As soon as ringside is clear and all the attention is on these guys, second 5 minutes, then Jericho makes a mistake, and then here comes Jungle Boy, and he explodes with the 3 dives, and now he's bringing the house down. Now, that was a good use of dives, even though they still don't look very fucking impactful. Everybody just jumps out and pushes off somebody these days, but still, that pacing and that location in the match, that's what brought them up. Now they're into it. Now Jungle Boy starts getting the near falls. Holy shit. Jericho made the fatal mistake. They're taking the people on that ride. Jericho should have pinned him when he had the chance. And Jericho made these near falls look plausible that this kid could do this in such a way, or he could be caught by something like that because he stumbled or whatever. Now you got 3 minutes left. Jericho shuts him down and gets some heat. Now, okay, the dream is over. We thought for a second we'd convinced ourselves Jungle Boy was going to do it, but let's go back to reality. Jericho's wiping the fucking ring up with him. This is where Jungle Boy has to have more fire and passion in his body language when he fights back and when he sells away. If he takes a bump if he gets hit with a move, he can't just take a bump and sell there. He has to take a bump and bounce up and show pain in his face and clutch another part of his body and start trying to crawl away and be pulled back into the clutches of the heel. Not just take a bump and lay there or sell on his face for a second or whatever the fuck. He's got to have more. And then finally a minute left, and I thought this was too early, but he did it great. Jericho gets the walls of Jericho and holds it for a minute, but he kept every 15 or 30 seconds, he'd bend him farther back until it looked like he almost had him double at the bell. But Jungle Boy didn't tap. And son of a bitch, wouldn't you know who won the pony? Jericho didn't beat him in 10 minutes. Jungle Boy wins. And then, you know, the 5 more minutes I was ambivalent on because I know Chris is trying to be a heel. Give me 5 more minutes. But then he started slapping him around when I thought he really should have dug into him and just been vicious, like that old Lawler Dundee hair match fucking video from Memphis, where Lawler just got into him and it looked like he was just going to beat him to death. But Chris may have been blown up at that point, be quite honest, from leading Jungle Boy around. But that's the only thing I was going to say, asking for 5 more minutes and then Jungle Boy doing a flurry and Chris bailing. I like that he bailed because he's the champion. But if I'd have been Jericho, I believe I would have liked Jungle Boy to win and then me to take one cheap shot and then fucking take off with it rather than doing the extra 5. Go ahead.
2 things. One, I don't know if it was here or later in the show, but at one point there was a Chris Jericho promo in the ring with Sammy Guevara, but it was picture-in-picture during a commercial break, so you couldn't hear it. Did you see that?
Well, I don't see anything in the break. The promo in this show that I saw of Jericho's was they went to break after Jericho bailed, and they came back, and he was live on the stage and healed about the whole thing with Jungle Boy and then said, we're going to have a surprise for Moxley on New Year's.
No, there was a completely different one where it was him and Sammy Guevara.
Okay.
And it was during a picture-in-picture, so you couldn't hear any of it. The one guy I want to hear talk on your show that's on the show this week, I can't hear it. But the second thing I was going to say, I want to get your thought, is I have really enjoyed Jericho for the most part in AEW. But, and I know I was critical about it a few years ago, and obviously it pissed off Lance Storm and a few other people. Physique-wise, it appears that, you know, I'm watching.
He's got furniture disease.
You know, I'm watching.
His chest is in his drawers.
I'm watching a lot of 1983 Mid-South with Mike Mills on the Mid-South Television Review podcast, and we're seeing the Junkyard Dog.
No, now.
Slowly gain. No, I mean, look, let's call it fair. Jericho has gained considerable weight, and if he hasn't, he certainly appears to have since AEW was announced and since AEW started on TV. Do you think that, considering his position in the company, that maybe he should try to
go on a diet?
Go on. I don't know what it is. I'm not going to say go on a diet or work out more, but I mean, it's noticeable. To me, it's really noticeable.
Well, I'm seeing a little belly. I'm seeing now. I cannot go as far as the JYD comparison because Dog went from like a fucking. Well, he was never a circus acrobat, but Dog went from a fairly flexible pro football player to a fucking immobile statue.
No, but I said 1983 Dog. So I mean, again,
okay, all right.
Again, look at him in 1982, and then look at him 1 year later. I'm not saying he got really big and slow just yet, but he started fleshing out, and it's really noticeable. And with Jericho, I think it seems to me like he's bigger now than he was 3 months ago.
Well, he's on the road, and we know how challenging it can be to keep on a good diet on the road. But anyway, nevertheless, I can see that part. Yeah. Real quickly, I've given up on Dr. Britt Baker now. Thank you very much, because now not only the Japanese girls beat her, but also the new American girls or UK girls or whatever. Aliens. This match was 2 segments, and I just wrote the match was held underwater. It didn't click to me, dog. It was they were underwater. It was a step off, a step slow, a step sluggish, a step whatever. And then finally, old Chris Statlander just powers out of Britt Baker's hold, and tombstones are 1, 2, 3. So thank you for coming, Britt. I guess they don't need her anymore.
I've said it since the beginning. I think she's She's very attractive. She obviously carries herself well. I've seen her do some good, like in those promo packages, some good talking. She has a background that you would think you'd want to exploit, and who knows where things go from here. But I've thought that and this isn't a knock, even though it'll sound like a knock. I haven't thought she was ready for that spot yet. I thought she is tentative, and there are times where it just seems like she's not ready yet for that big stage.
Yeah. Well, no, I can agree with that, but in comparison to the 98-pound Japanese schoolgirl and the, lesbian Freddie Mercury or whatever the other one's trying to do, she was the best choice. Now, this old Chris Statlander, she looks great physically, but now we haven't heard her speak. Does she have the power of speech? She was touching a lot of people on the nose or whatever the fuck. I don't know. But wait a minute. That's the thing. Here comes Brandy Runnels. Her mic is off at first. And then she says, "Goddamn" on TNT. I tell a chicken joke and the world burns, but she just actually said "goddamn" on TNT. And nobody's mad.
Well, she's Cody's wife. She can do whatever she wants.
But, I mean, what the... People in the world, they're mad about a chicken joke, but you can get away with the 7 deadly words, or the 7 dirty words, or whatever. But why would you, and here's the thing. If you can get away with saying "goddamn" on TV, then why would one of the fucking girls have said it over a malfunctioning microphone, which I assume was not written in, or even worse, why would they write her in a chance to say "goddamn" when it could have been one of the guys in the main event for the world title match? Said him would kick your goddamn ass. They've just wasted more shit. If you're going to get to say "goddamn," make something out of it. Just another one of the fucking girls saying it. And another one of the girls who's a fucking horrible actress who overacted a promo here, and then they're wagging their fingers at each other. And then she hits her with a fucking high heel. And then they go to a pre-tape with Tully Blanchard and Sean Spears, and they let this air? And this was backstage, not even live. This was the worst Tully Blanchard interview ever. Oh, my fucking Christ. And then real quick, let's get to the main event. The Young Bucks package against SCU. The Young Bucks talk and they show the highlights. I could buy the Young Bucks if they were smarmy, smart aleck, chicken shit, mid-card heels, and they could get some heat for being little fucking pricks that do double team shit and, and then a grown baby face fucking puts them in their place. They might get over that way. But when they try to talk tough, it's fucking preposterous, is it not?
I think that they're really bad promos, and I know they connect with a lot of fans with what they do, but I think that they are not good on the mic. And they come across, I'll give them one good thing I'll say about this. Usually I think they come across quite pretentious, and it's a lot of like bad acting, bad comedy kind of stuff that they throw in there. At least there was none of that here, but even though they were shot at kind of from below to make them look bigger than they are, I don't.
Where did they find a 3'5" cameraman either?
Yeah, I wasn't feeling the interview. I don't think they're good interviews.
Well, and here, the match isn't going to take long, and we'll come to the root of the problem. Bucks versus SCU. I like everybody in SCU. They're great athletes, but here, instead of bringing the Bucks up to their level because they can work, they go to the Bucks down to their level, and they started out all 4 guys doing a 27-phase high spot, and there they go. I did notice that referee Rick Knox looks like the heels from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. What were they? The gentlemen, the bald-headed trench coat wearing fellows with the hollow eyes and the pale skin?
I don't know.
They never slowed down anything. There was no pace. They do moves back and forth to each other. Nothing has time to register. Everybody stands around waiting to catch people who dive at them. Sometimes people tag. Sometimes they just come in to help with a stunt. And then finally, SCU beats the Young Bucks with their finish. And the Bucks are the same as Kenny Omega. They have deluded themselves into thinking because they were in their little world that they're over. And so they're starting to try to get everybody else over by beating them. But the average person who never fucking heard of the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega before this television program, well, you know what? They don't really give a shit because they're not watching. Because nobody that's never heard of these people wants to watch this program. And that therein lies the fucking rub. If you didn't already like all these people on this show, would this show have made you watch this show? Would this program, this series from the start, if you weren't already in love with the idea of all these people having their own wrestling promotion and you watch this show, would you watch it ever again?
No, what's kept me going since we started doing these reviews is Jericho and Cody, and whenever they actually have MJF on TV, but there's always a ton of stuff that I feel like I don't need to see, that I don't want to see. And when it comes to the dives, every match has dives. You know, it's like if you're going to have Jungle Boy Jack Perry do his dives, maybe cool with everyone else doing it.
Don't anybody else do a dive.
Or, you know, even
but they can't have a match without doing that.
But even Scorpio Sky, who's really talented, he's really good. He did that flip dive. I don't know what they call it. I can't stand Excalibur anymore. Let me throw this in here right now. Because he does this.
You come around to my side, eh?
Well, you know what it is? I don't care about the mask thing. At this point, I'm past that.
Yeah.
But it's the way he talks. It's like, and now he's going for a tope con hilo. Like, it's this weird cadence he has where everything comes out like this. It's the Young Bucks.
Because he is a mark, and I don't use the term mark for fans. I only use the term mark for marks. He is a mark playing wrestling announcer with his friends. Did you hear when he said that officially in the record books, Jericho and Jungle Boy had gone to I'm going to try to repeat it now. Instead of a 10-minute time limit draw, he actually said a minute time, Tim, and JR made fun of it. Go back and listen to it.
Although at this point, JR is just, if he's not checked out, he's just willing to say whatever he wants at any point. He's calling the butcher and the baker, he got their names confused. He called Jungle Boy Jack Perry at least 3 different names. Jungle Boy Jack Perry, Jungle Jack Perry, Jungle Boy Jack. I mean, it's such a funny show, but Excalibur's way of talking during just yelling out, oh, and there's I can't deal with it anymore. But my point was, Scorpio Sky, who's really, really talented, he does that flip dive. I don't know the exact name for it. I tuned out Excalibur at that point, or I would have known. But he did that on the 2 Bucks, the one who was ready for him and the other one who got his brother next to him to get ready for him.
Yeah.
And it looked really good. Problem was, I saw the exact same dive by Kenny Omega an hour and 45 minutes earlier.
Yeah.
You know, I know these guys are all talented. They like to do all their things, but let one guy do it this week, and then another guy can do it next week. So it has a little more
Well, that
impact.
wouldn't be inclusive, Brian.
Well,
that wouldn't be inclusive, where everybody wouldn't feel like they're loved and they belong. Anyway, here's the thing. The match is over. SCU wins. Here come the creepers, the masked, full-body outfit fucks that apparently come in all shapes and sizes. And apparently now we know that they don't even bother to put wrestlers under these fucking outfits. They surround the ring, and then the Dork Order themselves, the Fat One and the fucking Grayson, the Fat One's in a suit. They come out to the stage, and Fat Dork, we're going to call him Fat Dork, and the other one will be now Beard Dork. So Fat Dork does a stagey, rehearsed promo in a fake evil voice. And then the creepers swarm both SCU and the Bucks, because we didn't really know who the fucking baby faces were anyway. And they get horrible fucking heat on the baby faces. Then, now Kenny Omega has been beating his match, and you just said he got fucking dumped in the commercial break. Well, he hits the ring and is immediately shut down again. And by the way, now we know also Kenny Omega fights like a girl, not just like a 12-year-old girl, not even a 12-year-old professional wrestling girl, but like a 12-year-old girl at a goddamn grade school. He hits and his punches are shitty, and none of these fucking idiots know how to feed the baby faces coming in anyway, because when you do a staggered run in like this, Okay, the heels have shut down the baby faces that were in the ring, and they've got them down, and they've got them on the far side of the ring so that there's some room. Here comes one baby face. He comes in, you feed one heel, boom, two heels, boom, three heels, boom. The baby face is shining. As he goes to hit the first one the second time, he turns his back, and the fourth one shuts him down. They didn't fucking feed anybody. They didn't time these or stage them right. They didn't stagger him right. Kenny Omega gets shut down because he's a fucking limp penis, probably in real life as well as in professional life. He fights like a girl, and then he gets shut down after he's been beat on the show, so fuck him. That's what people are thinking, with some star. Then here comes Cody and Dustin. And I thought Cody was the one smart enough to stay away from all this, but he probably had to do him a favor, and he didn't realize how bad it was going to be. Dustin hit with fire, but there was nobody feeding him, so he tries to go and get people. And then he's throwing punches, and they won't shut him down. Finally, I think he had to tell somebody, shut me fucking down. And then they left him alone later on, and he got up and he looked like Andre because he was a foot taller than all the rest of these people, and he's throwing punches again, and it took him a while to get him down because they don't know how to get heat. And I'm not talking about the emotion heat. I'm talking about they do not know how to perform getting violent physical heat on the baby faces in a fucking angle. To have the fucking sound and the motion, the fucking kicking the shit out of a guy in one corner while you're holding the other guy in the other corner up and you're mugging him with shots and they're ringing the bell and there's people getting up on the apron. I used to send people from the fucking concession stand if I didn't have enough. I'd send some guy up with a fucking Ring of Honor t-shirt just to get punched and go down to the floor just because it adds to the chaos. You've got to create these scenes. They don't just happen. This was fucking rotten. And then this Shut the Roses down. The crowd is standing there staring. The ones that aren't booing are staring. Staring and booing, booing and staring. And not booing like, oh, get up and kick their ass. Booing like, would you get this bullshit out of here? And then in the middle of it, one of the creepers gets on top of one of the baby faces and is just pretending, obviously, pretending to punch the guy when he's punching toward his head a foot away from it.
That was Dustin that he did that to.
Yeah, that he was doing it, just pretending, obviously pretending, just swinging his fist, and you can see it. It's not like he's trying to hide anything. And then I know the fat dork gets two masks and gives them to the other two guys that look like small children, Silver and Reynolds.
Well, see, you missed they were doing these really bad packages. You may remember I mentioned to you that were very professionally looking.
Yes, I saw but last week's. Yes.
Yeah. And those
recruitment.
Those were the guys who no one had any idea who the fuck they were. All of a sudden there were these promo packages and I guess they were recruited and I guess these cameramen are on the payroll as well, that make these professional packages.
Well, anyway, finally, Fat Dork stands over Matt Jackson, who looks like he is prematurely either bit a blood thing or maybe his fucking tongue's just red. I don't know, but Fat Guy stuck his hand in Matt's mouth and like he was trying to pull his tongue out. And then my DVR cut off. But it looked, it was something that didn't work, right? Was he trying to rip his tongue out and there was going to be a blood deal? Was he sticking something down his throat like they stuck this fucking TV show down our throats? What was even going? Could you even tell what was happening there?
No idea. Wasn't explained. There's lots of things not explained on this show. That's how they went off the air. I mean, your DVR probably went off 10 to 15 seconds before the actual show went off.
Well, so anyway, I remember a couple weeks ago, I think I said April 15th, TNT will be tired of this nonsense. 3 more of these shows and they'll fucking kick them off right then.
I don't know if you've noticed, but one of the interesting things is we've been talking about the show with our honest feelings about things. And of course, your amazing expertise about these things. A lot of people focus on the negative. A lot of people.
Thank you, Brian Butterup.
Well, you're very welcome, Shoeshine Boy. But a lot of other people really have paid attention and have thought we've been fair, even though you certainly hate Kenny Omega, for example. But there have also been a lot of AEW fans just rushing to their defense and defending everything. You're not seeing that anymore. you're seeing a lot of their core audience saying, we don't want this shit. This is exactly why we don't like WWE. It shouldn't be guys who say, we hate WWE style wrestling because we're not the guys in those roles.
Yeah.
It should be, we don't like that because it's the opposite of what we think wrestling should be.
You're exactly right. The opposite of WWE sports entertainment is athletic-based wrestling, which is what the bill of goods that we were sold. Oh, and wait, there's more, folks. The show it went off the air on TV, but there was still something in the arena. We were told by the owner that it was going to be a sports-based presentation, and he owns a professional sports team, or his father does, so we were inclined to believe that. But then he goes into business, which is once again why that I have never had anything to do with All Elite Wrestling past the initial conversation, because I knew he was going to go in business with. The guys that more than anybody else in wrestling today have been responsible for teaching and telling and convincing the fans and themselves and their little circle jerk of friends that wrestling is supposed to be silly and fun and for everyone and look like a video game and be inclusive, and we can have the legless boy and JoJo the dog-faced man or whatever the fuck. And they don't know how to do this shit. And they don't know how to do shit that people care about, except for a fad audience of people who like silly young fucking children play fighting. And that's what their fans can't stand about it, because it's the truth. They don't know what they're doing, and that's what their mindset is. Silly children having play fights. No attempt to make people believe this. Killing the business. Kayfabe is dead, man. That's what the problem is. Now they've been handed this, and it shows that they don't know what they're doing. They can't do it, and to do it, they would have to admit that they were wrong all along, and they got over as a fluke because they just started doing shit that nobody else was ever allowed to do for good reason. And they found a fucking mark that's going to let them do it and pay for it. And they've got all their friends' jobs, and this is their example of wrestling. Every time there's a pinfall 1, 2, 3, instead of a fucking bell ringing, it ought to be that noise it makes when your video game quarter drops. That ought to be the end of every match.
You know, it's funny because when AEW was first being conceived, one of the things you heard a lot of people talk about was the success of the T-shirts, of them getting these T-shirts into Hot Topic, and how that...
The T-shirts that had none of their names or pictures on them?
Well, funny you bring that up. 2 quick anecdotes I think you get a kick out of. One, I know someone who recently went to the mall. The Kenny Omega shirts were on clearance. Secondly, I forget who wrote this in, and I forget if it was via email or Twitter, but someone got in touch recently. It may have been in a Mothership Facebook group. And they said they went to their wife's Christmas party, and they were wearing a Cornette face T-shirt. And there was someone there in a Bullet Club shirt. And they thought, oh boy, you know, we're about to have, I don't know who this guy is, but we're going to say something. And he went up to him, he started talking to him, and he goes, so you're a fan of the Young Bucks? And he goes, oh no, I saw this shirt. I like guns. So I got this shirt.
The shirt that sold was the Bullet Club. None of those people is named Bullet, and there was no picture or any wrestling on the shirt. It was the Bullet Club shirt is what got this fucking billionaire Mark to fucking finance these guys' grade school friends a wrestling promotion.
The guy liked guns, and he bought a Bullet Club shirt. I mean, that says a lot. But the Kenny Omega shirts being on clearance, I don't know what exactly that means, but I think it...
As soon as he got on national TV, they put the shirts on clearance.
At least,
there you go.
At least at this one location, yes.
Well, anyway, let's wrap this this journey into hysteria up with the crowning achievement of the night. After the show goes off the air, they're having, because they're in Texas, right? They're going to have a beer bash celebration. And apparently, poor old Scott Spears got fucking...
Sean Spears got
taken advantage of again and beaten up. And then Tony Khan comes out, and all of the vice presidents give Tony Khan a beer. And then Sean Spears rolls in, and Tony Khan boots him and gives him a stunner. Daddy said sell.
Jacksonville Dixie.
Randy Orton termed him Jacksonville Dixie. Travis Bickle called him Dixie Goulas. whatever the point is, and somebody on Twitter, when I illustrated this, even said, well, Shane McMahon. And I know, first of all, one thing, Shane McMahon could kick the ever-loving living fucking shit out of Matt Jackson, Nick Jackson, and Mike Jackson, and Tony Khan, all four of them. Shane McMahon ain't the goddamn greatest worker that ever graced a ring, but he could kick the shit at a real-life situation out of all four of those people together. Secondly, Shane McMahon has not been put in a position where he's already being called a money mark for buying or financing a promotion. His father already owned it. You can claim the nepotism for him getting the chance to get in the ring to begin with, but not that it is in any way similar to Tony Khan at 5'6" and 100 and nothing with rocks in his pockets, getting in the ring to live his dream by getting to give somebody a stunner in front of the people. What is it the kids say, the expression, it's not a good look?
Yeah.
It's not a good look for a guy that's already being called a money mark, and the evidence is beginning to bear that out, getting in the ring to play with his friends. Because even the fans are going, well, look, he gets to play. It's all playtime with the big boys there. This is what I hate it when I'm right, but it happens so often I've gotten used to it. How long have I been calling this? How long have I been saying these things? They're not up to it. And there was nobody there to yank a knot in their tail and say, okay, let's come back to reality. Here's what we're really going to do, and we're going to make this thing go. So anyway.
Did you see that kick he threw before the stunner? In his little pea coat. A little kick he threw.
But that's not, he looked like he was wearing a cowskin straitjacket. I don't know what the fuck that outfit was. But anyway.
You know, I've had a lot of experience in business with rich kids, for lack of a better term. Kids who never had to worry about anything. Their parents were filthy rich. And I've also done a lot of business with people who were rich because they worked really hard, and by hook or by crook, they made themselves a bloody fortune. And 8 times out of 10, if not 9 times out of 10, it's rare to find the rich kid who never had to worry about making $1 and never understood how to make $1 and doesn't have instincts, and put that kid in charge of a business. It's very rare to see that succeed. And this is in some ways an indictment of Tony Khan.
I was about to say, where's your silver lining coming up there, pal?
But there isn't. But I mean, that's the point. That's the point. We've been saying how you need one person in charge to run this thing. You need someone who doesn't want to be friends with the wrestlers. You need someone who can actually seriously look at the wrestling business as a business.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that somebody in the company should be in charge and be telling people what to do instead of asking them what they want to do, and instead of being friends and palling around with them to be liked, should be respected and possibly even feared because of their ability to wield the sword of Damocles over your employment?
I'm saying when you have one guy who is not a leader and you have a bunch of empowered executive vice presidents under him who some may have different views of what the product should be than others, you're going to have a backstage battle royal at some point, and there's going to be no one there to decide it and no one there to really do anything. There's no strong leadership in AEW at the top, and that's a problem.
Well,
and again, hopefully things get better, but the rarest thing I've ever encountered in business, and I've seen it happen, usually it's guys who are already in their 40s and their rich parent has passed away. But the rarest thing to encounter is a kid who has unlimited capital, who's been bought their business, and doesn't have to worry about a true bottom line. I'm sure if it loses enough money, if it lost WCW levels of money, I'm sure his father would say enough of this shit. But the decision-making going on now is mind-boggling, and you're driving away anyone who gave it a chance. And now you're even pissing off your core audience with stupid shit on your show. No instincts whatsoever.
We're going to close up here because that was a wonderful, as a matter of fact, the part of Jim Cornette will be played this week by Brian Last, the great one.
Oh, motherfucker.
But, oh, God damn it. But I'll say one thing and then we'll go. And that I want to know, somebody needs to find out for me. I want to know the person that came up with the Dork Order gimmick, that has been booking the Dork Order business, that has somehow convinced themselves that the Dork Order is a good idea that we needed to see more of after the first time, and that orchestrated that falderall where they killed every single one of their fucking supposed top baby faces off in one fell swoop and got booed out of the building. I want to meet that person. I want to give that person specific credit by name, because that person has now, in my mind, supplanted and replaced the Archbishop of Talentberry as the single stupidest motherfucker in wrestling.
It's what Vince would do. I mean, how many times has Vince wanted to push a guy, the fans don't react to them, and he goes, well, we're going to keep doing it until they... Roman Reigns. We're going to keep doing it this way until they come around.
But see, here's the thing. You've missed something. I don't know of anything they ever pushed as hard as they're pushing this in AEW, the Dork Order. I don't know of anything the WWF ever pushed that was this rotten to begin with. Roman Reigns, you can see.
Yeah.
He's fucking big. He can work. He looks good. He's from the family, whatever the fuck. Yeah, push him, right?
It was how the push was done for Roman Reigns.
Yes, it was the quality or quantity or nature of the push, not the actual push itself. Who thought that putting Dork Order from day one on national television was a good idea is a complete fucking idiot, much less doing all these other things with them afterwards. Whoever just said, I want to run a wrestling promotion where that is a tag team on my roster is a fucking moron. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, go ahead.
It's just, again, the Dark Order, Tony Khan giving people stunners. It's the exact shit that people hate the WWE for. And that's what you have to ask yourself. Did you guys want to be the alternative to WWE? Or did you just wish when you were watching WWE that was your face on there instead of Stephanie's, and instead of guys who aren't very good, and instead of the McMahons all over the place? Did you want to improve things, or did you just want to be them? But that's my final word for this week. I'll leave you alone now.
There you have it. I'll leave you alone. Well, folks, if you agree with us, we love you. If you disagree with us, fuck you. But we've had a great year, no matter which side of the fence you sit on, with the luxurious pasture of pleasantries that we sit on, or the miserable side of shit that you sit on if you're on the other side of the fence from you. Whatever side of the fence that you're on, we appreciate you tuning in for the year 2019. You ain't heard nothing yet. 2020 is going to be even better. We'll be back here on the program in a few weeks. In the middle, you can, or in the meantime and in between time, as Jericho would say, stealing from Ed Whalen, you can listen to the omnibuses over the next couple weeks, and we'll be back next year. Until then, for Brian, I am Jim. We are certainly not on the AEW payroll. Thank you. Fuck you. Bye-bye, everybody.